All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Board of Education of the Kaneland Community Unit School District at 7 o'clock. And I'd like to inform all board meeting attendees that this meeting is being live streamed and archived for access at any time by our community members on the internet within 24 to 48 hours of the meeting's conclusion. And if you will rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, roll call.
Mrs. Sparber.
Here.
Mrs. Junk.
Here.
Mr. Carey.
Here.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Here.
Mrs. Witt.
Here.
And Mr. Lawler and Mr. Rivas are absent.
All right, and so a quorum has been established with 5 members. I think the other 2 will be coming, but we will get going regardless. Does anyone want to move anything from the consent agenda to new business? No? All right, so we'll move on to approval of the agenda. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. Oh. And a roll call? Brian.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mrs. Sparber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye. Motion carries 5-0. And we'll move on to Board and Superintendent Slips.
Yes, I wanted to just take a second to recognize Mike Rice and Sarah Mumm, who will be here at our next meeting, but the amount of time and effort they put into the conference planning for last Monday and Tuesday for our 2 SIP days. They did a great job, just as well as our internal presenters. As we're trying to build more capacity across the districts, we have more and more of our administrators, teachers, and staff members leading those workshops. So they did a great job. And then also, just as a reminder, at our next board meeting on December 10th, we'll have athletics and activities, students from the fall being recognized. And in addition, Mrs. Maris, at that point, her and Mr. Rollman, who oversees athletics and activities, they'll share what the long-term plan is to recognize our kind of underserved activities. If you recall, that was one of the things that the board asked administration to look into. So Mrs. Maris and Mr. Rollman will have that update on how they're going to go about recognizing some of those groups.
Awesome.
Okay.
Good.
And then just also, it wasn't planned because the weather kind of changed on us, but thanks to Mark and all of his guys for all of their work. Started early and often, and I'm sure you're all tired, but thank you for all your work.
Thank you. Thank you.
So, that was all.
Great. Anything else? No. All right, so we'll move on to public comment. So the board values public input to inform our decision-making and to provide information and insight into what is happening throughout the district. Board meetings are held to conduct the business of the Board of Education and are required by law to take place in public. However, they are not public forums. We use the public comment section as an opportunity to listen to our stakeholders. For that reason, the board does not enter into debate or respond to questions spontaneously or without proper investigation and deliberation. In most cases, concerns or questions requiring follow-up will be referred to the superintendent. If you choose to speak publicly, we ask that you stand, state your name and village of residence or your association with us for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes or less so that all who wish to speak may have that opportunity. You are encouraged to seek a private appointment to discuss matters concerning individual students or staff members. While public education can be an emotional issue, and understandably so, the board strives to maintain a certain level of decorum at the meeting. Those who speak are expected to maintain a tone of courtesy and civility. The floor is now open to public comment, and if there is some, if you could do so at the microphone.
Hello again. My name is Matthew Beck, my wife Wendy. Once again, we come to this meeting in order to ask you to improve communication from school staff and administration to all parents in the district. I would also ask that when you do communicate with parents, you clearly indicate a timeline for all relevant events to avoid libel. The reason for this stems from the most recent incident involving a list. Here is our understanding of the timeline, so please feel free to correct us where we're wrong. At some point prior to 10 p.m. Tuesday, November 13th, the district was made aware of a list created by a student. Given the nature of the list, the staff and administration performed an investigation, which included contact with the parents of some of the children on the list. Then, through our friends in the community, we learned of the investigation and became concerned. This marks the 3rd time this calendar year and twice this school year that we have heard about a safety concern through the grapevine rather than from the district staff or administration. Based on our previous experiences with these situations, we left a voicemail with Dr. Layden asking to discuss the matter, and we also decided to post a question to all Kaneland parents available to us through social media. As expected, a discussion ensued on social media, with some parents corroborating what we had heard through the grapevine. At approximately 9:22 p.m. on Tuesday the 13th, after the social media post, Dr. Layden returned my call to discuss the issue, and he also mentioned our social media post. At approximately 10:07 that same night, an email was sent from Kaneland administration to all parents with the subject line, KHS Student Safety Clarification. When I read that email, I became extremely angry. It read as though my wife and I had posted something untrue on social media, which forced the school to investigate. But that's clearly not the order of things. We found out about this issue because the school had already investigated and yet again refrained from informing parents, all parents, of the issue. Lastly, at about 4:52 p.m. on Wednesday the 14th, an email was sent from Kaneland District Administration to all parents with the subject line, KHS Student Safety Update. This email indicated that their previous conclusion about the incident had been incorrect because more information had been brought to their attention. And while the email referenced our social media post, it did nothing to clarify the timeline involved. So, what have we learned from this? We have learned that going to social media provokes a quicker reaction and results in more information being given to all parents. We also learned that the administration wants all students and parents to report information regarding safety concerns to them, but they are still unwilling to share any of that information with all parents in a timely manner. As we have stated at previous meetings, we ask that you improve the communication to all parents when safety issues arise. We, the parents, decide whether our children attend school each day, and we cannot make that decision correctly unless we have all the facts available. We hear you when you say you cannot openly discuss these matters due to student privacy issues, but we think you're wrong. Included in this paper are links to 2 separate news stories that clearly indicate other schools in our area are distributing the kind of information we are asking you to provide. Thanks again for your time, and please let us know how we can help.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so now we'll move on to the consent agenda. Tonight, the consent agenda consists of the following action items: the approval of accounts payable and payroll November 2018, approval of minutes of the November 12, 2018 regular meeting, approval of resignations and employment of staff, and the following informational items: the student suspension data report, the Kaneland 2020 update, the staff advisory board memorandum, and the Freedom of Information Act FOIA report. So I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And a roll call.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mrs. Barber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Motion carries 5-0, and we'll move on to new business. J1, draft audit report presentation for Kaneland and Fox Valley Career Center.
I'll turn it over to Dr. Fuchs. She'll introduce our guest from Lauterbach and Amen, and I think everybody should have a handout in front of you that's going to be referenced. 3.
Yes. Good evening. I'd like to introduce Mr. Matt Barron. Matt is here this evening from Lauterbach and Amen. This is the first year of a 3-year contract that we have with Lauterbach and Amen, and he and his team have prepared the financial audits for the 2017-18 fiscal year. You will note that tonight's audit reports are in draft format, which is unusual. Usually by this time we have regular reports, but there is a problem with a report from the state, which is outside of our control as well as Mr. Barron's control, and he can give us more information on that. Mr. Barron will be going over both Fox Valley and Kaneland's audit report. We are not asking the board to approve the reports tonight, but just to receive the information. And then once we have the final reports, we will then bring those back for the board's approval. Mr. Barron?
Thank you, Dr. Fuchs. First, I'd also like to thank the board and everyone for providing us the opportunity to be your auditors for this first year. was a great opportunity this year to be able to work together. The first year is always the most difficult year of any transition, not only for us, but also for the team, and I thought it went very well this first year and look forward to building on the relationship that we started this year. In terms of, as she said, we have 2 different audits that we're going to be presenting, both the Kaneland and Fox Valley. So we have 3 documents here, so that's not a mistake. You do only have 3 documents. I'm going to start off with the Kaneland audit report and then go into Fox Valley from there. So I'm going to start with the audit report itself. So since this is our first year, I thought I'd give you just a very quick, high-level overview of what we do for the audit, just so you guys are aware of how our process works. And then from there, go into the actual presentation. I also keep that at a high level, and I encourage you at any point in time to ask me any questions as I go. So in terms of our audit process, what we do is I come out, we did an entrance conference with Dr. Fuchs and her team to talk about what happened at the district during the year to help to give us a plan and a jump start in our planning processes. We're making sure that we have adequate, our plan in place for when we do come out to actually perform the audit. Second, we then came out for 2 days to do preliminary field work, and at that time is when we test your internal controls. We do walkthroughs of your main control areas, which would be your cash receipts, disbursements, payroll, student activity, those different areas, so we can make sure you have an adequate internal control framework in place. Third, we came back out for 2 weeks to do actual field work where we're testing the numbers that we were provided to help to get this report ready. And from there, we went into the report processing phase to be able to provide these documents. So that's kind of the high-level overview of what we do and we're coming out to do to get to tonight. So in terms of the first thing we're going to go over is the audit report. So I'm going to take you and walk you through certain pages of it to highlight the significant points of it. About, I would say, 10 pages or so into it, there's a page that looks like this. It is the Certificate of Excellence. The district had submitted their prior year report for the Certificate of Excellence Award and had received it, so that's why the award has gone into this report. We are going to be submitting this year's audit report and see there's no reason we will not be receiving that award again for next year. Basically, it's a external third party that reviews the audit to make sure it contains all the adequate components for a school district audit. 3 pages after that is this page. It's the opinion page. Once you do have the final document, this will be on the Lauterbach and Amon letterhead when it is truly finalized.
What's the number? Is it a V or?
It's a 1.
It's a 1. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Independent auditor's report.
Okay.
Got it. Thank you.
We gave the district a unmodified opinion this year. It's the highest opinion that we give. Basically what we're saying with that is 3 things. 1, the numbers in here are what they say they are. 2, the district has an adequate internal control framework in place to help prevent fraud. And 3, the audit report is in compliance with all government accounting standards. Flipping forward 3 pages from there is the management discussion and analysis. What this entire section is a summary and narrative format, what happened at the district during the year, so you can read what happened here rather than all the words in the back. Since I'm going to be going over this within my presentation, we're going to flip on past this whole section. You can see at the bottom it goes MD&A 1, MD&A 2. Flip all the way past MD&A 11, and we can get to the actual pages 4 and 5. So go past MD&A 11, and we'll get to pages 4 and 5. Pages 4 and 5 look like this. They're the statement of net position. What the statement of net position is, it's all of your funds summed together in what we call full accrual accounting. So on page 4, you can see long-term assets, and on page 5, you can see long-term liabilities. At the bottom right-hand of page 5, at the very bottom, you can see our total fund balance, where we're at our net position at the end of the year. We had a total ending net position of $49.7 million. Once we take out the capital assets, we're at minus $58 million. So I'm sure all of you at this point are like, whoa, what happened here? So basically, this is what that new government accounting standard that came into place this year happened. It was called GASB 75. What happened in the past with pensions happened this year with retiree health insurance. This ultimately ended up leading to about a prior period adjustment of $43 million in total this year. And you can see this number in the very middle of the page 5, total OPEB liability, RHP and THIS. RHP is your internal one for your actual district employees. THIS is the one for the actual teachers. That number, that $34.6 million number, is the number that's actually in draft format right now. That is the reason this entire audit report is still in draft. Every other number within this report is done and final except for the numbers that are associated with this. This number came from the state. They did an actuary report study upon the entire THIS plan and the retiree health insurance. They took that and divided it up across every school district in the state. Their allocation method for that number turned out they were using faulty inputs for it. So what I am guessing is this number is not going to go all the way down to like 1 million, and it's not going to swing wildly up to like 60 million. It's going to stay in a pretty reasonable, number compared to this. So your 34 million is going to give you an idea of what that liability is. But that's the reason why this thing is in draft format right now. We were supposed to have heard, we were told 3 weeks ago they expected to have something in the middle of November, and we are to today, and we still don't have anything. So we're dealing with the state of Illinois, so it's hard to say.
So next year sometime?
Yeah. I know we have contacts at the Auditor General's office, and they are working on it very diligently to get us something, but in terms of an update, they will not won't give us a date. Any questions about these financials before we actually get into the fund level financials that you guys are more used to looking at?
I'm not sure if it's a question for you or for Julianne or Dr. Keats later about that 34 million. Is that real numbers that we have to start making payments on, or is that?
That's more probably a question for me.
Thank you.
What this number is, it's the amount of benefits that your teachers have earned as of June 30, 2017, technically, because they roll it forward to 2018, for what they've earned for their retiree health insurance. So all the teachers have earned a benefit to be able to be a part of the health insurance pool once they retire. And once that does happen, they obtain a benefit because they don't have to pay full market value for their health insurance costs at that point. So that's the benefit that they've received, and that's what's trying to be captured here. The premiums that are being paid towards it are going to continue to rise like any other benefit, but you don't have to necessarily pay directly upon this $34 million. It's a rolling number in terms of what you pay. You're kind of pay as you go. Your retiree health insurance.
The look on my face is, why? What's the benefit of putting that on our financial statements?
Great question. What they are trying to capture with this new accounting standard is to show the amount that is basically getting paid out for the benefit of having retirees be able to stay on the plan, and the benefit that they have received due to the state statute that's been in place that their premiums can only rise about 5% each year when premiums do raise extra. It's basically the amount that's being subsidized across the state and for anybody, for the teachers to have these retiree pension or health insurance plans.
So it's just transparency?
Transparency is what they're trying to go for. In the big picture, it's been more confusing for most people, which is the problem with it. But in general, that is what they're trying to capture, is the transparent amount of the total package. Because you can compare that number to the numbers below it, the pension liabilities. So actually the retiree health insurance benefit is actually more significant than what the pension is. If you can see that just here in the numbers.
Okay.
Yeah.
I understood the explanation. I still don't get the higher logic of.
I totally understand. I've gotten this at every single board meeting presentation I've had of like, so do we start setting aside money for this right now, or how does this pay? Like, what happens here? And truly, at this point, you guys are pay as you go for your retirees and what the state asks for your premiums. So you're not really setting aside money for it. You're kind of just paying along as you go.
Okay.
And if we don't have the money?
That's a different conversation.
It comes right out of payroll,
Yeah,
so we would reduce payroll
yeah.
one way or another in order to make our payments.
Basically like income tax.
Right.
Yeah.
It's exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah, the promise has been made to the teachers for this health insurance is the same as the premium or the pension, so the amount that you need to pay towards it.
So any kind of a change would happen in the negotiating,
There's
right?
yeah, there's
Well,
some
it's
of that.
statutory. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
there's some of the state. There's a lot of this part. These premiums of retirees are built into what is at the state level.
Okay.
It's statutory. It has to get,
So
a
it
lot of
doesn't-
this has to get changed through the Constitution level.
Oh, okay. Got it.
Anything else with the rest of it for this? So we go on to the fund level. So let's go ahead and go forward to page 7, please. Page 7 is back to your fund level financials, what you're more used to looking at, what you budget for, what Dr. Fuchs presents to you on how things are going. So in terms of this, I'd like to take you to the right-hand column. Second number up from the bottom, your total fund balance. We're at a total across all of your funds of $8.8 million. In terms of your general fund is the main fund I'm going to focus on tonight, which includes your education fund, your O&M fund, your land cash, and your working cash are all in this general fund. That fund balance at the end of the year is at $3.4 million. So how do we do this year? Let's go forward to page 9. On page 9, this is your income statement. Far right-hand column, again, is your totals. Third number up from the bottom is how we did. We had a total increase this year of $2.2 million. How did that happen? We can kind of go across. We can see our general fund number. We had a total increase of $4.4 million, which includes the $3 million one-time transfer out of transportation that was approved this year. Really, if you go up for the general fund and how we did, we had a total increase of $1.5 million. This was due to additional GSA money and categorical money that came in on the revenue side, and the expenditures were held in check, with the reduction of the FTEs going into this year to allow for this $1.5 million. Between all of this, we ended up at the end of the year a positive $3.3 million, considered compared to last year we were at a minus $970,000 across this fund. We're at about 7% of our fund balance compared to our total expenses. In terms of our grand total across, we're at 13%. So we're going in the right direction. It was a good year in terms of how your funds performed this year.
So on an accrual basis, I'm trying to remember, did we end up with 5 state aid payments? So it's a little, did you say artificial? That's it. I was looking for a word, so there's one we can use.
In terms of accrual basis, we're trying to take that into account.
Oh, sure.
So you have that, because some of that was picked up last year for your receivables. This year, there was a little less for the receivables of what was outstanding at the end of the year from the state. GSA overall was a little higher for what each of the districts did receive.
But if our spending remains constant, we probably wouldn't expect a $1.5 million increase ahead of budget next year because we wouldn't get 5 payments. Is that?
I'm actually not sure about that. I think you're going to, in terms of how you're budgeting and look at the cash, we can look at that a little closer because we do try to build that in with our receivables that are put into these actual numbers that are your accrual basis to hopefully stabilize the differences of when the state actually sends the payments to you, because you can't really count on the state of when they're going to send it. You just want to have a consistent approach of how many you have recorded each year.
Correct. But if you recorded 5 in the audit and we typically would get 4, then that doesn't seem like... At this
cash level, yes, we recorded 5, but we kind of backed out one of them at the beginning for the modified accrual basis. It was recorded last year as a receivable.
So it went on the 17 books?
But I think you still recorded one that came in August. I believe there were 5.
Yeah.
Didn't we?
Yeah. But we had recorded back some from the prior year.
Okay.
In terms of how much last year was considered accrued revenue a year ago was $1.3 million. This year, at the end of this year, we had $237,000. So there was $1.3 million worth of cash received this year that we didn't recognize as revenue in our number
From last year.
from last year.
Right.
And we
Okay.
added an extra $236,000 on
So we only have 4 payments in there.
in terms of actual revenue recognized.
Yeah.
Cash received, yes, you had 5 that was received.
Right, but on the accrual basis, you're saying we had 4.
Yes.
Because we both had one late
Correct.
both years.
But the amount of the receivables one year versus the next is very different.
Right. Right.
Any other questions about these before I move forward to the management letter? Any other questions? Can we go to the management letter? All right. So the management letter is the skinniest of all of these documents. So we'll hit that for Kaneland. What the management letter is overall is additional information we want to provide to the board of feedback, comments for improvements that we'd like to see made. I typically think of these in 3 different types of categories. 1 being informational, just kind of giving you a heads up about certain things. 2, best practices that we see out in the industry. And 3, being internal control issues that we think need to be addressed immediately. In terms of what we gave you, we have 1 comment in here. And what it is, I would put in an informational type of category. The only management letter comment we provided to the district was for funds over budget. There was 1 fund, the transportation fund, that was ultimately ended up over budget. I consider this an informational one. It's one we need to communicate to the board just so you're aware of where things ended up at the end of the year, that there was a fund that went over. As Dr. Fuchs and I spoke about, it was due to special education transportation ended up being higher, and there was additional budget dollars went to that for next year's budget. So I believe this one has been ultimately addressed properly, and I don't see this as a big deal, but more of just an informational one to tell you guys about. Any questions about that management letter before we talk Fox Valley?
Just maybe to be
Yeah.
overly simple. So Julianne and her department
Yes.
does the books.
Yep.
You audit them,
Yes.
and then you sent them to someone else to get audited so that we can get an award for them.
No.
We do, the board does.
The board does.
We send them to the third party.
So we've had many sets of eyes overlooking this document that tells us how much money we have. Okay.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We're
So there's none hidden anywhere.
yes. Bingo. The numbers are what they say they are, so we get a clean opinion.
Thank you.
All right, we'll hit Fox Valley very quick. Everything I talked about in terms of the process is the same. We gave for Fox Valley also an unmodified opinion, also the same, with being the numbers are what they say they are, adequate internal control framework in place, and proper, all the footnotes are in compliance with government accounting standards. In terms of how we did, I'd like to take us actually all the way forward to pages 6, or actually just go to page 6. This is our fund level financials for Fox Valley and where we ended up at the end of the year. On page 6 in this document, our total fund balance at the end of the year is $268,000. So, how did we do this year? Let's go forward to page 8.
Middle.
I
get it now. I get the trend.
Okay.
So we just looked at, yes, that. And then
On page 8, this is your income statement. Third number up from the bottom, where we ended up was a total decrease of $54,000. Ultimately, this is due to revenues were a little below budget. Enrollment was down this year for Fox Valley, but also expenses were also held in check and held below budget. So we only had a decrease of $54,000. Ultimately, our fund balance is 13% of our total ending expenditures. And in terms of why there's only 3 documents is because we don't have an additional management letter for Fox Valley. We did not have additional comments to provide to you, so we gave you no management letter comment, or no separate management letter for Fox Valley.
If I could just mention on the fund balance for Fox Valley, we monitor that very carefully. We do that through the refunds that school districts get each year. They always pay tuition up front, and then depending on final enrollments, Dr. Burchell and I go through a process to determine how much money to give back to districts each fall based on the end of the fiscal year. And so by doing that, we can control the fund balance. We don't want it too high, too low. One of the reasons is because if it's too high, it's just sitting there. If it's too low, if a school district doesn't make a payment, they can't pay Kaneland, who we then cover their payroll, and we don't want to do that. So we manage it. We try to keep it around the rate range that it is, and we do that through those refunds each year. So
I'm sure I've seen this before, but what's principal retirement? I can't remember what
Are we looking in
page 8.
in Fox Valley?
Yes.
Yes.
You had the installment payable that was outstanding. So this is the final principal payment that was made upon the installment, the copier lease that was
Okay.
outstanding.
Thank you.
That it was the last payment for that lease at the end of this year.
So if you rebate some of the fund balance, does that reverse out of tuition?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have a reconciliation. Let's see. Is that on the very, very back page, I think, actually?
Yes.
page 34. Yeah.
The very, very last page of the document is the reconciliation. In terms of the revenues, you can see last year's tuition refund is kind of added back in, with then the ending one being taken back out to get our true net revenue number.
Are there any final questions for Mr. Barron with regard to the audit reports? Okay, I also would just like to thank Mr. Barron and his team for the work that they did. It is a long process, starting early June, I think, or
Yeah,
May,
yeah.
and ending most recently. We still have work to do once we get that last THIS number from the state. Once we get that, I'll send out the final audit reports, post them on the website, and then bring it to you in consent for approval, because it's just the one number that changes.
Yep.
So,
All the other numbers will stay the same.
all right.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you, everybody.
Travel safely.
Yes, you guys too.
Thank you.
Are we gonna get a letter? We usually thing for the
This is it?
board members need to comment on and stuff.
This is it.
Any input? That's it.
This is it.
Because we have to like sign something
Oh,
every year.
not for this.
Are you talking about the have you?
That's the levy.
The
Oh, the
one,
fraud.
yes.
I'm sorry, the fraud questionnaire.
I'll answer that one quick.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, it's okay.
Yeah.
We have a different overall SAS 90. It's called SAS 99. It's a fraud risk inquiry is what it's called. We have a different interpretation of how we perform that than some of the other, like your previous audit firm. We tend to keep our fraud our fraud inquiries in-house with Dr. Fuchs and some of the staff at the district office, rather than going out to the board members. If that is a request that you would like us to do, we certainly can. Our interpretation of it is we have typically not really found fraud by going to the board members, because most everything is, they know everything that's going on in-house within the administrative office. And a lot of times when we say fraud in front of board members, they usually get pretty panicked of like, what do you mean there's fraud? Are you saying there's fraud? Oh my gosh. So in terms of that is usually the reason why we like to keep it here, do all our investigative questions within the administrative office. But like I said, if that's a procedure you guys would like to do in the future, we can send those letters out again, but it's just not our firm
Just
policy.
used to getting them. That's why I ask.
Yep. Great. Thank you.
All right.
Thanks.
Again,
Julianne, do you need these back?
thank you. Good to see you too. Sounds good. Thanks. Pardon?
Dr. Fuchs, do you need these back?
I do not. You can shred them, keep them, treasure
Okay, 'cause I
them.
know a lot of times we,
They're draft.
Okay.
So
Right.
I'll
Got
do.
it.
I'll send the others electronic, and then if you want a hard copy, I'll just give you one. Yeah. So, but these, yeah,
Things on that page, right?
that's correct.
Footnote disclosures that go along with it, that'll change those, but it's all related to the information.
okay. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Sweet.
Have a great night.
Take
too.
care.
Yep.
Bye bye.
Be safe.
Somebody's deal.
All right, so move on to J2, report on capital improvement plan 2019 update.
I introduced Dr. Fuchs, and I think she's going to introduce Mr. Payton. And just thanks to Dr. Fuchs and Mr. Payton for the amount of time and effort they put in. As you'll see, or you saw in the notes, and they'll mention, they go building by building. They tour each building. They talk to administration in each building to put together this series of reports. So with that, I don't know if it's Dr. Fuchs or straight to Mark.
Great. I'll just say a couple things. We kept the format of our report the same this year. And the first part on page 3, I always like to go over with you. It's the table of what we've accomplished from last summer's approvals. This past summer, we did some life safety projects. We did masonry. So that worked out very nicely to bid that and get it all taken care of. Seal coating and crack filling of our parking lots. Our East Gym floor we're very proud of. Some of you may know that we have some work yet to do, but now we're waiting for the seasons to be over, and then the punch list will be created after that, or the punch list has been created. The repairs will be done after that to some of the touch-ups. None of it is affecting the quality. It's only aesthetics right now that we want to just make a little bit better.
Will we have to pay for that? Or?
No, it's a part of the contract.
Okay.
Yeah. The East Gym bleacher replacement, the bleachers are in and they look really nice. They have Knights on one side and KHS. Yeah, on the other. So that looks really nice.
And they're easy to get up and down on?
Yep, there's rails. So that's a good thing, right, Gail?
Yes, it is.
It is.
The nice
So-
thing about those rails too is they're not the removable kind. They're fixed and they're very sturdy.
Very sturdy.
You know, some of them removable
Yeah.
kind are kind of wobbly.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are really nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's a good thing too.
And the seating is nice. I haven't been there yet, obviously. So the seating is also nice.
They're bleachers. They're not.
It's not
They're
reclining.
not lazy
Some
boys,
Some
but
that are nice and then some that are.
yeah.
Okay.
The harder track was resurfaced. Mr. Payton will tell you that was one of the best projects that happened this summer with the least amount of problems, so that's good. And then some pieces of fitness equipment were replaced at Harder Middle School. It's hard to believe, but it was 10 years old and used every day for various physical education classes. So some of that was replaced, and we spent a total of the $634,000. So that's it for last year's. I will then now turn it over to Mr. Payton to go building by building. The one thing I would say is the high school is still our most neediest because it is the oldest. And I would say we spent about 10 hours with their administrators, making sure that we had a solid understanding of the needs for that building. So,
Certainly.
yep, go ahead.
Okay, I'll spare you reading the entire document, but I'll just highlight some things. On page 4, Blackberry Creek Elementary School, we do have some sidewalks that need to get replaced. There's quite extensive heaving and cracking in one area, and we're going to take that opportunity to address a need that the administration there brought to our attention. They would like some additional sidewalk up front because they have a lot of parents who like to gather there at the end of the day to receive their children. So they want to create like a little parent area, like a reunification area out front. So we're going to take the opportunity while we're fixing some concrete to add some additional concrete up front. And then on page 5, this is going to be a theme you're going to see throughout this document. As curricular and instructional programs are updated, new furnishings may be needed. There's been a lot of feedback from the administration that they want alternative seating and things like that in classroom to facilitate personalized learning and things like that. So that's kind of a theme throughout this document. We have completed the 10-year life safety survey, so now we're working on the action items out of that at Blackberry.
Wait 1 second. We, at Blackberry and McDole, we are finished with year 2. We have 3 more to go before all projects on that report have to be finished and completed.
Then on the page 6, the table, you'll just note that we're indicating some money for concrete. Specialty equipment is that alternative seating and classroom furnishings. And then security systems would be cameras for that building. Any questions on Blackberry?
Are there currently cameras in there that need replacement, or is it?
No, the elementary
It's a whole new-
schools do not have any cameras at this time.
Okay.
So this would be, for all the elementary schools, it would be additional.
Okay. Thank you.
And those are at every door or within the building or?
Maybe.
Yep. I'm going to have Tim answer that question.
We were going to start out with some just basic cameras. There were going to be some that covered the hallways, library open areas, and then just some on the outside. It wouldn't be like at the high school where, I don't know, we have 130 cameras, something of that sort. So it would be very minimal, but just enough to cover the entrances, playground, and the main hallway areas.
Okay, but the entrances are covered.
That would be part of it, yes, covering the entrances.
Currently,
And
you
I
have.
do take that back. I'm sorry, go ahead. There is a camera at each of the elementary schools with the new security entrance where you actually push the doorbell to enter. So that video feed is actually recorded, but that is just the people walking up. So there is no other security cameras in the buildings.
Okay.
And I believe that we started with either 5 or 6 per elementary.
It
Or
was
was
a few more than that. It was,
Was it?
7 to 9. I'd have to go back.
Okay,
That
I'd
was
have to
over a
look at-
year ago when I
Yeah.
got those quotes together.
Okay.
But like I said, there was just a few on the outside
Right.
and a few on the inside.
Do those cameras have real-time access?
Mm-hmm.
Right, so they're fed up to the high school or to the administration office?
It would probably feed to a central server, probably here.
Which is where you
With
have
a 10 gigabit fiber we'd feed it all back here instead of housing it in that building.
But you can watch it from anywhere.
Right.
Yes.
that's where I was
Yeah.
getting
Yeah,
to.
it
Yeah.
plugs all into a master system. So even if you're at Harder, you can view just Harder's cameras, or you can give rights that somebody at the district level can see all the cameras, or you can limit by building.
You can even have it on your cell phone.
That's what I'd mentioned before, and you guys kind of looked at me weird. I said, okay.
Are these all wireless, or do you have to?
No, they're cable cameras. Yes.
So how much work is going to go, I'm assuming 17,000 doesn't buy you a whole lot of labor to put in cameras.
No, I don't have a copy of it.
That was off of
per
your-
building.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're talking.
That's just Blackberries.
7, 8 cameras and with labor and everything, so
Okay.
you're at about $2,000 with camera and installation.
Okay. Thank you.
Now, different areas were different cameras too, just so you know that it's not, some have 360 view cameras, some have 180 view camera, and some just have a straight view, depending on the area.
Yeah, I was just more going,
So,
how many
I just didn't want to
walls
get
and
quoted $2,000 per spot.
No, I was going for how many walls and ceilings do you have to tear up to get to the...
The companies that we've used, one of them, Pentegra Systems, they do a very good job of cleaning up after themselves. When they come through, you don't even know they were there.
Okay.
And there's largely, most areas already have the penetrations, and there's just feeding another wire through an existing penetration.
And we do have cable trays in a lot of the ceilings where they can just follow the same path of other cables.
Thank you.
Are we installing the same type of cameras throughout?
Typically.
From the same vendor?
Typically, it makes it so much easier instead of having too many hands in the pot. We typically use access cameras, but in certain areas where you need like a 360 camera, we might choose a different brand than access. And the one thing too is the technology is always changing. So an access camera that we're using right now may not be something we use a year or 2 years from now.
That was my next question.
Okay.
How often do you have to replace these?
The cameras that we have in right now, minimum 5 years. We could probably get up to 10. It's just going to be what comes out in the future. There's new cameras out there that detect newer things. Not that we'd ever get into facial recognition, but there's things of that sort, or detect things on weapons and things like that.
Sure. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. You're welcome.
Any other questions about Blackberry before we move on to Stuart?
All right, can I ask a question in reference to something you mentioned earlier, which the personalized learning, seating arrangement changes and such? Is that certain classrooms throughout?
So what we did is we had a lot of requests last fall through the foundation for specialized seating, and we want to make sure that our administrators have an opportunity to help direct that. So in this plan, we've put $10,000 in for each school for the administration to help direct where that special seating goes. So right now, I don't know where it will go. I don't know if it'll get through the plan, because in a little bit you'll see how much our requests are and how much we have. So at the next time you see this, you're going to have a priority list. But if everything were to go through, or if that particular line item were to get approved, the plan right now is to put that money in the administrator's hands so that they can meet with departments, teams, grade levels, and determine who gets what kind of seating, because it's different in each building. The high school needs are different than the elementary needs, which are different than the middle school needs. So that way they'd have the most flexibility.
Right.
Does that mean you would
Remember-
eliminate the, you would ask teachers not to ask the foundation then for those types of things, because otherwise
I
it
believe
goes
that
against what you're trying to get.
Exactly, and I believe that was part of our thought. We weren't going to approve them this year, but there were so many of those types of requests that it ended up that we had to, well, we didn't have to, but we chose to approve some of them. And you saw some when they came here that night, and the wiggles and things like that. So there are a variety of different seating options. It's not to replace a whole classroom like that, but one or two per classroom for kids that might need it. And maybe it's not you today, maybe it's somebody else today, but that they have those options available. So that's why the administrators can help to best determine how many and where certain types of seating need to go.
Okay.
So
I think the foundation, they want the innovative focus, so they thought if a teacher was passionate about seating, they could try it out and get feedback to administrators, and then hopefully the administrators could spend money wisely, but it would come out of the district in the future.
Right.
Likely.
Exactly.
But hopefully it was a good trial.
Yeah.
And is the idea to add to the rooms or to replace some of the ones that are there and place them somewhere else? What's the idea?
That's a great question. It's a little bit of both, but right now we are struggling when they want to replace it because it creates storage issues.
True.
And the ROE, when they came through with their inspections, that was one of their comments to us. So we're working on creating additional storage for this furniture, where there's really, if there's furniture that needs to be replaced because it's broken, we'll put it there. But if there's nowhere right now that needs it, we are storing it, because in case if those teachers want it back, we want to make sure that we have sets for those classrooms. Additionally, if our enrollment goes up, we have to have extra seats. Mm-hmm. So for right now, we're planning to store any furnishings that get replaced by the alternative seating. At some point, we may need to do something different, But for now, we're going to store it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, is it possible that the items that are purchased would move around every year, like based on students' IEPs or students, the needs, like maybe you have 2 wigglers this year and maybe next year you don't have any wigglers, but another class has 2. So you would then move that specialty, or is it owned by the teacher's classroom that it's purchased for?
Kind of had that question too. Can they share it?
Yeah. I mean, it seems like it should be a flex thing.
Yeah, they can look into that.
Move things around where they're needed.
And also based on students as they move from year to year, as those schedules are finalized, then staff can look into those and go talk with their principal about it.
Okay.
Yeah. And it makes it easier to do that if the district purchases it rather than if it was a foundation grant to a teacher.
Right.
So that's part of our thought process as well.
It's not easier for us to come in.
That's right.
Shift, yes.
Yeah.
Good idea.
Does anyone remember what one of the foundation grants were roughly dollar-wise for classroom, for alternative seating, rather? I'm just wondering what $10,000 buys us versus.
It was low. It was like 500 and.
Yeah, there were 3 of them. I think it was anywhere from, I think one of them about 300. There's a higher one, about 6 or 7, then one maybe up towards 1,000. Because I know there were 3 different ones, and they were asking for different things. So we kind of, as the foundation had that conversation, we tried to approve it at different levels to provide different experiences.
Okay.
But those are onesies also, right? The ones like, for instance, the ones they display to us are like the onesies per se, as opposed to potential multiple ones.
Maybe 2 or 3 per classroom or something, yeah. And I don't envision right now a whole classroom changing into that alternative seating, but just to have opportunities and options.
And you have control. Okay. Got it.
I think the district control makes sense because, to keep control of it's part of the strategic plan, so it just makes sense to keep it all in-house. Not saying we're not appreciative of the foundation.
Right. You know what? The foundation did their job in the sense of letting us pilot and try. And that's what we need is some seed money to do things like that. And it's working, and so, yeah.
And be able to get that feedback is essential, too, before the larger expenditure, if that's the direction we go.
Right.
Okay. At John Stuart Elementary, we do have some concrete work that has to happen there, too. And again, just like at Blackberry, we're going to take that opportunity to possibly add some additional concrete that the administration has expressed an interest in. They would like an additional sidewalk put in because of the way they have to drop off and pick up students now, given the population that they serve. We're going to look at possibly adding an additional sidewalk.
Where?
It would be along the east side of the front parking lot, which would be the north parking lot.
Okay.
They have, I believe it's Mid-Valley buses that drop kids off there because the Kaneland buses are lined up along the front. There isn't room for the Mid-Valley buses, so they swing around the corner. Right now, the students have to walk through the grass to get to the sidewalk. So the administration there has asked for a sidewalk along there. And we have some other damaged concrete that we have to repair, replace, so at the same time we'll do that. As far as the building envelope goes, we do have a few of the outside doors that are really in need of replacement. So we're looking to do that. For the building systems, the biggest need we have right now is the last paragraph. We're having difficulties. In fact, Train has told us we don't support this anymore. We don't make parts for this anymore. You need to plan to replace this. For the building automation controls, replacing that system will be approximately $80,000. That is also the case for Shields and the high school. The high school's more than $80,000. It's a more complicated system. So later on in this document, you'll see that we're recommending replacing John Shields this year, And then we'll have a stockpile of spare parts. If we have an issue at one of the other buildings, we can use those spare parts to get us a few more years out of those other two buildings, and then down the road, work on replacing those.
What's a BAS and what does it do?
A building automation system is it's the brains of your mechanicals, your boilers, your air handlers, your univent ventilators, your they call them variable air volume boxes, VAV boxes. It controls all of that. They're your chillers. So it's just the brains behind that. So we're having a meeting here tonight. We wanted the heat on, so we put a schedule in the building automation system, and it makes sure that the heat is on in this area, but also it makes sure that the heat is off in all the other areas that aren't being used this evening. So does that answer the question?
Thank you.
Okay. So we want to be able to control all that stuff, and we're not going to be able to.
So is it the computer components that are just getting outdated, or is it the actual?
Well, yeah, I mean, there are circuit boards and things like that are at each, like every VAV box like you have in here has a little circuit board in it, and it communicates to a larger circuit board. And then there's a master for the building. In the case of the high school, there's actually 3 masters there. But so it's some of those components. They just don't make them anymore, and you can find them on eBay and stuff like that, but you can't get them from the manufacturer anymore. So the goal would be to do one building and then just retain all that useful stuff to use if we have problems at the other buildings.
Thank you.
Okay, and then on page 9 is the plan again for Stuart. You'll note the concrete work, the exterior door work, and security systems again being the cameras for that building. Also for Stuart, Shields, Harder, the high school, and the Meredith Road building, they are all due for their 10-year life safety survey. The last time it was done was 2009, so in 2019 we will need to do it again. So you'll note money there for that as well. And that money is not for making the upgrades that come out of that report. That's just for the report. Yes?
You said 5 buildings at $8,500 apiece?
No, $8,500 for Shields and Stewart, but the larger buildings are more money.
Is that something we bid out or go to 3 different
It's our architect, and we'll get bids from our 2 architects of record to see which one will do it for the least amount.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Okay, any other questions about Stewart, or did I just read Shields? I apologize. That was Shield.
No,
I
you
said
did Stuart.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
No, it's on the other side. Okay.
Yep, you're good.
Trying to save paper, so I put it on both sides. Okay, John Shields Elementary School. One thing to note, the administration has reported that they feel the playground equipment is becoming worn and would benefit from beginning to replace that equipment. So we'll be looking at that in the next couple of years as possibly showing up on this report. Again, doors, just like at Stewart, they're the same age building, so it makes sense that those really highly used doorways are starting to show their age and need replacement. Building systems again, you'll note the same verbiage that we had in Stewart. Train is no longer supporting those building automation controls, so we are going to have to upgrade. And we have put in this plan upgrading Shields. On page 12 are the items that we're recommending in this plan. Exterior doors, specialty equipment being the furnishings again. HVAC systems is the $80,000 for the building automation controls. Security systems being the cameras. and life safety survey. Page,
I'm just being annoying tonight.
no problem.
You've got 80 grand in there for automation system.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've got, what, next year or the year after, a bunch of money to replace the HVA system. I'm assuming that in 2021?
Yeah, that's, what is that?
Well, no, you had a note in here about alternative HVAC systems for this building.
Oh, that's probably
Univents.
Univents, but that's not enough to do Univents, so.
That isn't where I'm going. The
Okay.
question is
But I can look it up.
whatever you're wanting to buy,
Oh, no, I can't.
going to be compatible with whatever you're thinking in the future. I know it's
Well-
not here, and I can't hold you to it.
Yeah, it's going to be the latest technology, building automation. So it would be compatible with anything you would buy 2-3 years down the road, certainly, yeah.
Ryan, and I don't have my laptops, it's in the car, and so I can look that up and tell you specifically what that's for.
That wasn't where I was going.
Oh,
That's
sorry.
not necessary. Thank
Okay.
you,
Okay, sorry.
though. No, you're... Don't mind me.
Those the word you use?
Okay, page 13 is McDole Elementary School. Not a whole lot of highlights to this building. It's in pretty good shape and doesn't have a whole lot of needs right now. So on page 15, you'll see that we're only recommending the $10,000 for furnishings, the $17,500 for security cameras, and some additional to work on completing the life safety projects that came out of the survey a couple of years ago. Okay, Harder Middle School. On page 16, under the site, the tennis courts, using an 8-year benchmark, should have been done in 2017. So we're recommending that it gets done in 2019. And the administration has identified the need for movable outdoor bleachers. So right now, we've got that in the plan for 2020. You'll also see down the road when we do the high school, they've also expressed a need for movable outdoor bleachers, so maybe it's something that they can share, use here when they need it here, and then we can move it to the high school when they need it. But we do have that in the plan for a couple years down the road. The gym floor at Harder Middle School is now 10 years old, so it really should be refinished, like sanded down to the bare wood, restriped, and refinished. Typically, you do that on a 10-year basis. We do every summer, we do a screen and recoat, but this would be every 10 years you typically do a complete sand it down to the wood and do it. Otherwise, it starts to get slippery and create safety issues.
And Mark, how many times do you anticipate being able to get that out of a floor?
Should be 3 or 4. I mean, you should be able to get 40 years out of a hardwood floor if you take care of it right. Yeah.
Okay.
Some of that depends on what kind of damage, dings. If you got some really deep gouges and stuff like that, then it starts to shorten that. But I don't think that's the case here at Harder. No recommendations on building systems on page. Oops. On page 17, then. In the capital plan, we have $60,000 for the tennis courts, $70,000 for the gym floor refinishing, the $10,000 for furnishings, $26,000 for security cameras, and $17,000 for that life safety survey that needs to be completed.
I have a quick question about, on the movable bleachers, what do we do here that requires outdoor bleachers? We don't have football anymore. So we have a track meet maybe.
Track and cross-country are the two big things that they expressed in the need for.
Cross-country, you wouldn't sit in a bleacher, you wouldn't sit in bleachers to watch.
Well, I
just
think they
wonder if-
were,
I mean,
they
are
were.
we doing it to service the Kaneland Youth Football League and people like that?
No,
who
that
use
that wasn't the purpose, and actually, probably largely, the bleachers would be at the high school. If we were going to do like the shared scenario, it would be at the high school for their home games rather than renting the bleachers that we currently do. So it wouldn't even be available to the youth football at that point. What they were talking about is crowd control at some of the cross-country and track events. If they can get the student athletes even into the bleachers, okay, here's the Yorkville section, here's the St. Charles section, or whoever's at the meet, get them into a large set of bleachers like that rather than kind of running around the campus, kind of getting in the way. So that was kind of the concept they had for it, where the high school was thinking like a set for the band.
Right, I get the high school. I just thought, but it's a shared situation between the two schools?
Well, that's kind of the concept I think we're looking at, is that we would use it at both locations, because they both have expressed a need for it, so.
I just think one need is much greater than the other.
Cross country doesn't do the tent setups and what have you like track does?
It doesn't
I'm sorry, I
for,
can't
it
answer
doesn't
that.
for,
Not middle school.
only the Saturday meets, like the weekly ones, the Tuesday, Thursday type meets. It's usually just a duel, and it's not the tents, and it's a lot smaller than what you've probably seen.
Yes,
With 20, 30 tents.
Yeah.
Still a lot of kids though, because especially it's the only sport, one of the only sports that has sixth graders, so you get a lot of.
So my next question is, what does it take to transport them from potentially the high school to down here or vice versa? What does it take?
We would be able to do that with a maintenance vehicle.
So it kind of folds and...
Yeah, it folds up and just gets towed. That's how we deal with the ones that we're renting from DeKalb now. Most of the time, they bring them over and drop them off in our parking lot, and then we hitch them up and bring them into our stadium.
See, I didn't even know we were renting those.
We've been doing that for about 5 or 6 years, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are those
So
like
this
are those the ones like where the middle school kids?
The middle school and the band,
And the
the
band.
one by the scoreboard.
Okay.
Yeah, those are the two.
And what do we pay for renting on those?
About $6,000 a year.
So 60,000 will get us 10 years out of it?
All right, any other questions about Harder? The middle school, gym floor, just like here at Harder Middle School, is hit 10 years old. It does see quite a bit of use from the high school and community groups, so it should really be refinished. We are putting it in the plan for 2020, but really it needs to be done soon.
What was that? I'm sorry, Mike. What was the subject matter there?
Meredith gym floor.
The gym floor, Meredith Middle School.
And it's mostly used by?
Well, the high
Travel-
school uses it every day, and then community groups after they're done.
And that's heavily used by them, right?
Yeah. It's heavily used by the high school, too. I mean, every day they're in there with some athletic program.
Right.
Okay, the only thing to note on page 19 is the money for the our 10-year life safety survey. Page 20 is the high school. Under site, the track still is in need of replacement. We did some repairs in 2017. We'll continue to do repairs to allow deferment of the replacement. We have it built into the plan for 2020. There are some drainage problems in a couple locations on the campus, varsity baseball field and the FFA farm field. We continue to take different approaches to both of those locations, and we're doing that through O&M budget money rather than a capital expenditure. At some point, we may decide that we want to do that, but right now there's no cap. We're not requesting any capital for that. Page 21. There's the top of the page. There's the comment about the renting the bleachers. Both Harder Middle School administration and the high school administration requested the same thing, effectively. The building envelope. Overall, we've got fairly new roofs. There is one area that's older and really should be replaced if money becomes available. That's the area over the West Gym, District Office, Industrial Arts Lab, and the canopy at the west end. At this point, we're estimating around $700,000 to replace all of that. Right now, we don't have any leaks, and we don't anticipate any, but roofs are kind of fussy, and sometimes they deteriorate quickly. So we just want to keep that on our radar. And a number of outside doors need to be replaced at the high school, so we have some money in the plan for that in 2019. Building interior, we still have about $23,000 worth of band equipment that needs replacement, so we've built that into the plan for the coming year. And 3 science classrooms in the original part of the building need to be updated at an approximate cost of $125,000 per room. The high school administration has indicated that this is one of their highest priorities. Given limited resources, the plan includes minor upgrades to each room to address compliance and safety items that the teachers have brought forward. So you'll see some money in the plan for that. For food service, the dishwashing machine is approximately 15, 16 years old, something like that. So an approximate cost of $30,000 to replace that is built into the plan. And the high school administration would like to have the main foyer updated with new lighting and new ceiling. The estimated cost of that is about $30,000. Page 22. The administration has indicated a need for new carpet in a number of places. One of them is the graphics lab office. The problem with that is that it's put down over asbestos-containing tiles, so you have to get the asbestos tiles out of there at the same time you replace the carpet. The adhesive they use does not allow you to pull up the carpet without damaging the tiles, so it ends up being quite costly. If we were to move forward with that, we would remove the asbestos tile in that whole graphics lab, because the whole lab has asbestos tile. Because the cost difference between doing it in one little area, it's all in the setup and stuff, so we might as well knock out that whole area at the same time. Also, carpet in the main office, student services office, auditorium, and the district office are in need of replacement.
Since you brought up that scary word asbestos, tell us why it's okay for it to still be there.
Well, if you don't disturb it, it's not a problem. But if you start pulling up the carpet, that's when you're going to start breaking it up and causing issues. So.
Okay. Yeah, just wanted to make sure everybody understood that it's fine there until you start to take it.
Yeah, until you start to damage it, and then that's when you release the fibers into the air and cause problems. So, but we clean it and wax it every year, so it's safely contained. And so, in the case of the office, it's under the carpet. So.
ask you some questions about the two bathrooms that are there in the entryway to the high school? Has that ever been addressed, or?
Well, that's the next comment here.
Okay, gotcha.
Washrooms in the C wing and main entrance are in need of updating due to their age. Right now, they're in the plan for 2020.
Okay.
And then again, the comment about the building automation system needing replacement. Like I indicated before, we've got in the plan for shields to be done first, and we'll use components as needed from that upgrade to keep the high school and Stuart going if they should have any failures.
You know what, Mark, and I think on page 22, that 80,000 needs to be 125 for the high school.
Yeah, that's correct.
Sorry about that.
Last paragraph?
Yep,
Okay.
125?
yep. The other two buildings are 80, but this one is more expensive because of the 3.
It's just a much larger, more
Yep.
complicated system.
I have a quick question about when you get to the updating of the restrooms. Is there anything that can be done so that if we wanted to make any of them gender neutral, that updates would have, I would think I don't know this for certain, but I would think that usually gender neutral bathrooms have, different privacy.
There's a lot of
things
different
for privacy,
concepts
and I
for
just wondered
that.
if we should go ahead and.
And I thought about that as well, but there's a lot of different ways you can go about that.
Okay.
But what we would do in this case, these would be major renovations. It wouldn't be, new coat of paint. It would be tearing the whole thing out and starting over. So we would be working with our architect, and we could bring that concern to him at that time, and just say, hey, we would like to make some gender neutral locations available, and we could see what kind of designs or concepts he could come up with. But there's a lot of different ways to go about that.
Okay.
Yep.
Also, we do have some gender neutral bathrooms
Aren't they
in the high
C
school.
wing? I thought
Yes.
they were in the C wing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
There's not a lot, but there are some.
yeah.
Yep.
What's wrong with those bathrooms?
Have you been in them
Been
lately?
one of them lately?
When we're up there, I usually go in there and I do my stuff and get the heck out of there.
They're a little rough.
Are they? All right.
Yeah, they're,
They look like they're 30 years old.
yes,
Uh,
very much so.
Don't judge them that way, but
And
whatever.
those are the bathrooms, that are near the basketball court and stuff like that, which means you've also got a lot of people from outside the district coming in, and they need to be upgraded.
And if it were up to the high school and they could have all of the capital money, they would update them. But they've prioritized the science classrooms over the washrooms, even though they'd really like to have both.
Right.
So,
They're not in good shape.
Okay, on page 23, just to highlight the different items, we do have some concrete work at the high school as well, a sidewalk that needs to be replaced. Exterior doors at the high school, so we've earmarked $50,000 for that.
I might stop you real quick. Similar to what we did with the masonry last year, where we had several buildings with smaller masonry projects, we did one bid for the whole district. That's what we would do for the concrete. I'm sorry, for the exterior doors. Well, actually, the concrete also. And the concrete. And that's why you're seeing that come up all in one year, is so that we can cluster those and get the most for our money through bidding.
Sweet. You answered my question. Nice. Thank you.
Okay, specialty instructional equipment, 125 of that 188 would be for the science room upgrades. I'm trying to remember what the balances were.
Band equipment.
25,
Band equipment.
23 for band, 25 for the dishwasher, and then the
Or
one.
30 for the dishwasher.
That's right, we
Yeah.
increased that to 30, you're right. So that would be those three things.
And plumbing systems,
That's the first two washrooms, because I think the other ones, actually, those are in there.
no, I believe you're right, that's for
Yeah.
the first 2 would be in 2019, then the next 4 would be in 2020. Security systems, a little bit of additional cameras for the high school.
You lost me. What's that 150 for?
Washrooms
Yeah.
in the main foyer.
Yeah,
So that's in next year's budget.
Yeah, so they are in there, Gail. But again, with the list in mind, I don't know if it's going to make the cut.
Right.
And then the life safety survey at the high school. So then on page 26 is the total list, kind of all summed up. Some additional money for life safety projects at McDole and Blackberry, outdoor door replacement at the high school, Stuart and Shields, carpeting for several locations, and main foyer upgrades for the high school, dishwasher for the high school, life safety survey, and that would be just the survey for the high school, Meredith Middle School, Harder Middle School, Shields and Stewart, refinishing the gym floor at Harder, upgrades to the science classrooms at the high school, building automation controls for Shields, Blackberry, Stewart, and high school concrete, upgrading 2 bathrooms at the high school, security cameras for all 4 elementary schools, Harder Middle School, and I think there was 1 or 2 at the high school. Band equipment for the high school, resurfacing the tennis courts at the Harder Middle School, and the money that we discussed on flexible furniture for all buildings.
So right now, this list is not prioritized. We have a meeting with the administrative team in December. Our plan is to work with the ad team in December to prioritize these projects. Once we do that, at your December board meeting is when I'll come with the financial projections so that you can see where we are. If you'll recall back in September, I had suggested that we put in $600,000 for capital projects. After December, we'll know what that leaves us, if there's any room for more, or if we need to do less. And then in January, after the ad team has a chance to meet and you've seen the financial projections, we'll bring back a prioritized list with a recommendation for you. But from what you know, some of these things are required, so they'll be at the top of the list, such as your life safety projects and surveys. Those are the kinds of things that we have to prioritize. The other safety things, such as your concrete, where it could cause a danger. So we'll work together with the ad team to develop that prioritized list for the board and a recommendation, hopefully early January, so we can get bids out there as quick as possible. The quicker we get the bids, the better the pricing and the better opportunity we have to finish those projects in summer of 19.
So the life safety survey stuff, life safety surveys, those get done during the 19 budget year, but we don't actually have to start making those repairs until...
After the survey is sent into the state, you have 5 years that the clock starts ticking.
Okay.
Yep.
There's actually like 3 different levels. If they find what they call an A level, that you have 1 year to get done. B level stuff you have 5 years to get done. C level stuff are recommendations. They don't ever have to be done, but they're good best practice. So.
Okay. And the dishwasher in the cafeteria at the high school, can't we just charge the kids more?
Anything else?
One of the items you mentioned, Mark, and I don't know exactly where you said it, but it had to do with, our staff/teachers pointed out some compliance safety items in rooms or things of that sort.
Science.
Is that something you can you concur with, or is that something we caught as well?
Well, what I've done is I've asked our architect to come in. He's gone through to kind of look at some of their concerns. I mean, like compliance, ADA compliance specifically is what they've mentioned. Yeah, there isn't an ADA spot or a wheelchair accessible spot to perform experiments and stuff in those rooms. So we know that's accurate. Some of the other safety things that they've brought up may or may not be, but he's looking into it. He's he and I walked through and did a survey of the rooms one afternoon. And so now he's gone back and checking codes and all that kind of stuff to see, okay, you need to do this, you need to do that. This would be nice, but we don't have to do it, that kind of thing. So.
Okay.
Mark, do you know, are we looking at, I don't know if this is the right time to do it, but are we looking at putting the security lights in the bathrooms?
Oh, yeah.
Is that part of this plan?
No, we'll do that with just O&M money, yeah. I mean, it's not very significant in terms of money.
Okay.
Security cameras in bathrooms?
Lights.
Oh, lights.
So when the power goes off, greater.
So when the power goes off, there's lights in the bathrooms, but not cameras.
I heard some. Question. This has been, I think, brought up before, but now I see it all together and such. In particular to Harder Middle School front, that we did a resurfacing or repavement or whatever, or the seal that they do.
Seal coating and, yeah.
When is that due to be finished again? Do you know?
We try and do a 4-year rotation.
So where are we at with that? Do you recall?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we just did it over the summer.
Okay. All right. My case in point, the other day I walked out, it's a big gap in the middle of the driveway, this deep. We're going into winter. Then when stuff gets in there, or ice, if you will, and expands it and breaks it up.
Well, I mean, yeah, in general, cracks are not good for asphalt.
But we just did it. We just redid it. I don't understand.
And we did. I've reached out to the contractor, and we're going to review it together again. But what gets tricky is, was that an old crack? Was that a new crack? Was that an old one? Did they fill that crack, or did the guy before them fill that crack? Do you know what I'm saying? And in general, you want to try and fill all the cracks you can, but we don't have an unlimited budget for it either. So they try and do the worst ones at the time, and that may not be the worst ones today. Right. It's not a exact science.
I just get the concept of
what you do is you bid so many lineal feet, and there's an engineer involved, and he says, I want to make sure these are taken care of, and the other major ones at the time when you crack fill, but we don't have, like I said, we don't have an unlimited budget, so when they run out of that lineal feet, then they're done. They don't fill any more cracks.
We can bring in a small subcontractor in the spring to fill cracks as needed, because we do that up at Meredith every spring. The big holes that come from winter, as soon as it thaws, Mark brings in a subcontractor and gets those filled.
I was just trying to get it before winter hits, since we just did it.
Yeah.
I mean, it's literally, it's got to be an inch, and it's about this thick, this deep, and it's like, oh my God. Winter's coming around the corner, and I know what happens, but I can appreciate budget-wise,
yeah.
And just didn't realize how you did it and such, so. Thank you.
Anything else? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your work on this project and working through it with me and all of the administration. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Mark.
And I like to hear, it's so obvious that everything's tied into the strategic plan, and I know that's the way it's supposed to be, but I can say that that's not always the way it has been, and so it's great to hear everybody who speaks to us, talks to us, with that same focus. I appreciate that. Thank you. It's obvious.
All right, so J3, report on teacher laptop replacement plan.
We talked about this a little bit last spring, and before any final decisions were made, the board had asked us to come back to share more information. So Mr. Wolf is here to share more of that information. There's some of the financials in there. So Mr. Wolf will.
I'm sharing the information. He's here as a resource.
Oh, okay.
Sorry about that.
Nope, that's fine.
Yep. Sorry.
Sorry to mean to scare you, Tim.
I know, that's what he's like, no! That's exactly the look on his face, too. It was quality. So Tim has done all of the legwork on this. Our first teacher laptops were purchased in the spring of 2013. At that time, the budget had showed that we had some extra money and we knew that we needed to get it done, so we did. Since that time, we would have replaced them, but the years where they needed to be replaced, we've cut $1.5 million of planned expenditures in 2017 and then again in 2018. So the teacher laptops generally didn't make the cut because we were reducing staff and a whole lot of other people and programs, or not really programs, but things. And so we know that the laptops have to be replaced. Mr. Wolf has been doing a great job and his team with replacing batteries, but now those batteries are dying. And so he has obtained pricing for 2019. That is the pricing that you see here. We wanted to bring this laptop information to you tonight, separate from the one-to-one that you're going to hear in December. So this is one independent project, the teacher laptops. The teachers need the laptops for a variety of purposes. The one-to-one initiative is separate that you'll hear in December. So then again, this laptops, Mr. Wolf has gotten two different prices, one for the Dell 3390 and one for the Dell 7390. After reviewing those, ideally we would have taken the 5289, but if we wait till 2019, which we think we might or may not, depending on what we decide to do, they're going to be out of stock. So at that point, we're looking at the 7390. The reason why primarily is for battery life. The 3390 only has a battery for 6 hours, which means it wouldn't be kept charged for an entire school day. And so that does not seem practical. Whereas the 7390 has about 16 hours of battery life. That seems to be a better option for our teachers. Additionally, knowing how long we might need to keep them, unless if we choose to lease them, choosing a slightly higher quality is in the district's best interests. Along the way, as Mr. Wolf obtained the quotes for these, we've learned 3 different things that will be happening in the market for the computer industry. And so we're asking that the board take that into consideration when making a decision on when and how to replace the laptops. The first one is that we've heard that there's going to be another tariff. There was already one tariff in October of 18 of about 10%. From what we've been told, the manufacturers have pretty well not increased prices, but they've endured that tariff amount. However, they're not going to probably do that again in January with a 25% potential tariff.
Is this the Trump-China trade argument?
I believe it is. That's what we've, yeah. Yep.
I can hear you.
From what I'm talking to any of my vendors, things that are coming in from overseas, they're looking at a 25% increase from tariffs. I can't tell you directly who's implementing those. That would be my guess, is what you're stating. But it's across the board, and it's not Dell. It's HP, Lenovo, any electronics manufacturing from overseas.
The second challenge that, thank you, the second challenge that we are going to experience is a potential shortage of the I-Series processors. I'm not sure if you've bought computers recently, but they've got the Intel series is the most commonly used processor for computers, and they're estimating a shortage in 2019. If that happens, we may not be able to get enough product, so we're looking at that. And then the third challenge, as many of you know, interest rates are starting to climb. And so if we were to go on a leasing program, the longer we wait, we may be potentially looking at higher rates. I don't know that it's significant, but every basis point is more money. And so given the current age of the laptops, the rate at which they're breaking, which I will let Mr. Wolf discuss that, challenges predicted by the market, we're recommending that we maybe try to get on this sooner than later, meaning either try to purchase some or lease some, maybe even before the end of the calendar year. I'm not asking the board to make a decision tonight. Tonight is just for you to ask us questions and to receive the information. But if the board appears that you might be interested in moving forward, we will bring a recommendation to you in December with your direction based on tonight's discussion. Let's see. At this time, as we look at our expenditure budget, we are running slightly ahead. And so with that being said, I feel like we could potentially purchase about half of the needed laptops, or if we wanted to, we could potentially lease them. On the next page, I've given you the charts. I can walk you through that chart. I've done both computers, just in case if you wanted to see the price differences. The 3390 is the smaller one that we're not recommending. The 7390 is what we are recommending. You can see the cost to purchase, and then you can see the different leasing options. There's a 3-year option and a 4-year option. Under both leasing options, the leasing company allows you to sell them back at the end of the lease. But please know then once you sell them back, you have to enter into another lease. So depending on if you want to get in a leasing cycle, you could do that, or you could get into a purchasing cycle and then stretch the life of the laptops perhaps out more than 4 years or not, depending on the financial condition of the district at that time.
So that $615 to lease is divided by 3, just for our yearly cost?
Yes, because your annual payment is $205,178 is what I've got there. Yep.
Wait. Why do those two numbers not match?
20.
No, total cost to lease is $615, but you have $585.
Yeah.
That's the amount financed, and then your total cost of the lease includes interest.
Yeah, that's the processing fee.
Okay.
Oh, and then there's the $359 one-time fee. It's right above in the title of it.
Oh, okay.
So at this time, if the board has questions, Mr. Wolf is here to answer any questions.
Tim, is the only difference between the two, or the only major factor between the battery life?
No, the physical size is very close to the same, other than thickness. The higher model is a lot lighter, and it actually has a smaller bezel, so you get a bigger screen inside of it. So I'd say it's about 3/4 of an inch larger than the other one on the higher model. Durability, they're probably fairly close to 7000 series is slightly better. It just depends how many years we're looking at. You know, right now we're pushing 6 years. These will easily get 3, 4+ years. You know, I never expected these to last 6 years. We're very fortunate that we're going to get 6 years, but they're very beat up. You have to take in consideration a teacher that uses it every day, takes it home. You're in education. You take it home every night. You take it back to school. You take it between classrooms. If you use it like you're supposed to, it will get beat up, you know.
Do the teachers have docking stations in their classroom?
It's a USB dock.
Okay. Does that charge it too, or no?
It does not. They have a separate charger at their desk, so.
Oh, so they can charge while it's docked? Or
Yes, they can
standard
charge
dock?
at their desk,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
currently.
So you said, I think some teachers have tried it out. Has that been in like a variety of buildings or?
We had our instructional coaches and then a handful of other teachers throughout the district. There was no certain, so many at high school and so many at elementary, but it has been across the board. And I've had positive feedback from all the teachers that have tested them.
Did they try the other one as well?
I'm sorry?
They tried both models?
Yes, and we started with the 5,000 series because that was over a year ago. That was, it goes 3, 5, 7, series. 5,000 is the middle of the road. Dell is discontinuing the middle of the road. They said that's too many different models. They want to just go with the 2 different ones. I don't know how much longer that the 5,000 stock will be out there. It will not be available in 2019. So, all the pricing and everything we got was for the 2019 purchase. That's why it's much higher than it would be if you buy it today. And I'm not doing a sales pitch. I'm just stating the fact.
I guess I'm just wondering between the 3390 and the 7390. It sounds like with a charger at their desk and probably one that they can take home, or then that erases that issue pretty much.
To a point.
3/4 inch bigger screen.
I'm sorry, what was that last part?
I said, well, okay, the difference is the battery life. But if they have a charger at their desk and they have a charger they can take with them,
Mute.
Why are
you
you
know,
$500 more?
yeah, why would we pay so much more for the battery life? And then a little bit bigger screen, would be nice to have, but is it really a need to have?
It's about half the thickness, a lot lighter laptop.
And that's also a convenience, but, I mean, laptops that are
Sure.
heavier aren't really that heavy anyway. I don't know, I just think when we're talking about being strapped for cash, that maybe we get what's needed and not what's nice to have.
If we were to go with the 3,000 series, I would recommend that we lease instead of purchase then, because of the fact that it is not as durable. If we were to go with the 7,000 series, we could weigh out the pros and cons of leasing versus purchasing, because it is possible, based on Mr. Wolf's experience, that it could possibly last us more than a 3 or a 4 year lease because of the quality. So depending on how we want to look at that.
So I guess that's kind of like the financial question, right? Like, is we could cut the price almost in half if we go with the smaller one, but are we cutting the price half now and kicking ourselves later down the road?
Right.
Or are we going to be able to suck out an extra couple of years out of the more expensive one and then be ahead? And I'm not doing the numbers in my head fast enough here, but my assumption is that we really need to look at that, I think, right?
Yeah. We're recommending the 7,000 series based on the various factors. And so with that being said, we can either purchase or lease it. If the board would decide to go back to the 3,000, our recommendation then is definitely a lease.
Isn't that kind of what we did with the ones that are currently they have, that you've been able to kind of work into the next years and stuff like that? I mean,
We purchased those.
We have not leased any laptops.
Right.
Ever.
Okay. But we also purchased the one, we didn't purchase the least costly one either.
No, they were 11 something. I can't remember. It's been almost 6 years.
Yeah.
But it was 11.
It was about
$1,100 in that ballpark.
Right. And
I'm glad we did.
right,
You know?
and because the term on that was like, what, 5 or 6 years?
What do you mean term?
Well,
Expectancy
the life.
life, yeah.
4 or 5 years
Yeah.
And
max.
we've had them how long?
In the spring, they'll be 6 years old.
Okay.
The life expectancy of batteries typically go between 2 and 3 years. They'll start failing at the 2-year point, decreasing. That brings up another point of the 6-hour battery. at least when the battery starts decreasing, we still have more life. I have teachers that come to me right now that the batteries only last about an hour or two after it's even been replaced, because we're at the point where those batteries were replaced are now over 2 years old. Summer 2016, we replaced all the batteries. So we're approaching 2.5 years old on replacing all the batteries in them.
Isn't that typical though? About 2 hours?
No. These are older, but the newer laptops, typically it's about a 6-hour minimum to 8 hours. The Chromebooks that we have will do 8 to 10 hours easy. So in any of the newer stuff, you're looking at 6-hour minimum.
Mr. Wolf, what was the battery life expectancy on the ones that we have now? Like when we purchased those, were we looking at something that was 6 at the time or 10 or what?
You know what, we weren't looking at length of time on the battery. Teachers are so much more mobile now. They're taking it everywhere they go, whether they're at Starbucks or after school activities and other things. But at that point, it was, I want to say, 4 to 6 hour battery back then.
Okay, thank you.
Do any groups of teachers have different battery needs? I'm thinking, is the high school teacher different than an elementary teacher?
I would prefer to keep everybody on the same model. I know where you're going with this.
I know you would.
It's going to be juggling things as teachers change positions and roles.
Which sounds miserable, and telling one teacher they get a 6-hour battery and another 12, then I wouldn't want to be you, or 16. Really where I was headed to this was more, if we want to try to get to a cycle where we're not replacing all of them together, you know, would that, if you did half and half, which I'm not sure we could go there, you know, would we want one to age out faster than the other? You know, so you're not replacing them all together.
And then if we did a lease, though, then it would be consistent. In a lot of other districts in Kane County and around, they just do lease the teachers' laptops, so then they're always on a rotation of whether it's 3 or 4 years. I would recommend 3. And then the teacher has a current device always of 3 years old. And our payment would always be relatively the same every year.
Tim or Julianne, can you tell me why we wouldn't want to lease? Like, what's the downside of leasing? Because if we're replacing computers anyways after 6 years, what's the benefit of owning a computer we're going to get rid of?
If we don't have, and if it's okay for me to answer, Julianne, if we don't have the funding there 3 years down the road, then we
get tied to it.
You get tied to it, yes.
I also don't like to pay interest when you have cash in the bank. You know, we have cash, so why would we pay interest? But
now
it's that's generally my thought.
I'm looking at these numbers and I'm looking at this and thinking, but to make that back, you have to keep these computers for 6 or 7 years, right? So, and that's still, you know, we're still behind on the cash then. Like, we're still not as ahead as we were paying yearly, right? Especially since we're saying that a 6 or 7 year old computer doesn't have any value, or not a lot of it.
You can make it up in year 4.
How much though? And I look as I'm estimating here.
So if you look at the 7390, your cost to purchase is the 585, 394.
Right.
And your 3-year lease is the 615, 534.
So if you
I was talking about the other computer as well.
So if you keep that computer 4 years, you kind of missed a $200,000 payment.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, what I was thinking was, if we're worried about durability, then release the smaller model, which is a cheaper model, and who cares if we beat it up for 3 years, because we're going to give it back to them and get a new one, as opposed to paying the extra money and owning a bigger one that would beat them up as well. In my mind, I think we'll give them a smaller one and
replace it for years.
Yeah,
it's always in the budget, and it's not like we're trying to push it, and they've got computers dying in the classrooms because we don't want to find the money.
Yeah. I mean, that's the pro of the lease.
Right.
Yeah, it forces your hand to keep it funded.
To add confusion to the chaos, I don't like buying them all in one. I'm not a fan of lease. I never have been. You're going to have to convince me a lot to sign on to that. But I don't also like buying all of them in one cycle. So is there...
I understand totally what you're saying, and we've talked about this before, but we've been trying to do this for a couple of years now, and this is something that we should have done in the past. with all due respect, if
No,
we
no,
were going to...
you're not gonna hurt my feelings.
We're at a 6-year-old laptop, in mileage-wise, you're driving a car with 250,000 miles.
But we're looking at an extra, hopefully, an extra amount of money in the budget that isn't actually there yet because we haven't gone through the whole cycle and we don't know that we're going to have unforeseen expenses. So by spending, lost the numbers, almost 600,000, we could end up putting ourselves into a negative budget position by.
Yeah, 600,000 is over 3 years.
You're right, my mistake.
Okay.
No, I was looking
Yep.
at purchase price.
Oh, that is correct. Yeah. And it,
We
for
just said that a 6-year computer is like driving a really old car, but we're talking about buying computers and making them last another 6 years.
you will,
In order to make it a better deal. Then.
yeah, you will
Right.
make it a better deal at 4 years. Just slightly over 3 years, and you've got your money back
If we're
from the
comparing
lease.
Leasing and buying of the 700 or 7,000.
The same
series,
model.
right?
Correct.
If we're comparing it to the 3,000 series. that's
Let me
a different
tell you,
story, right?
it's still, in that 4th year, you've made your money.
Yeah, but Tim was saying a 4-year-old 3,000 series computer isn't going to make it.
It possibly
Yeah.
could.
Sorry,
I
I'm
never
looking
expected
forward
the laptops that we have the last 6 years. So I don't have that crystal ball. It could. It very well may be. Times have changed since we bought those laptops 6 years ago. That was the first time we ever purchased laptops for teachers. They had desktops before. This is an important tool now for the teachers, as you know, and it's changed so much. They rely on it so much more than they did 6 years ago. So whatever you decide, obviously I'll support, but 3 or 4 years would be ideal, and I'm speaking on behalf of the teachers. You know, you want to have them to have a tool that's good and usable to accomplish, what they need to do. And you work in education,
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. But I guess I'm not seeing the connection then. If we're saying a 3 or 4-year-old computer is good, and that's our goal, right? Why do we ever even look at 6-year-old computers? And why aren't we just looking for the best buy for 3 or 4 years and just keep that going, right? Like looking for that best deal for that 3 or 4-year-old, and then we're done. As opposed to, well, 3 or 4 years is good, but we can try to suck out a few more years out of this and deal with that.
Because you're making a couple of different, kind of making 2 different arguments.
Yeah.
Okay.
The 7,000 might last
You
more.
personally, but
I
like if you're saying, oh, but if we don't want them to last more than 3 or 4 years, but if we purchase this higher level one, we might be able to make it the 6 years, and then it's like, but you don't want to make it the 6 years, so it's kind of
We may
mixed
have,
signals.
if we have to.
Okay.
So it's like an insurance policy.
Let's see, yes, because we never expected on these going 6 years.
And I would say that I would err on the side of purchasing over leasing in most instances. I also do not like to pay interest when we have the cash in the bank. So with that being said, and then Tim's recommendation of the 7390, I could go either way, purchasing or leasing, but it makes more sense to me to get the higher quality, and then after year 4, if it lasts 4 years, you're ahead. But then you have to come up with the money again after 4 years, like we are now. And I think that was Pedro's thought, similar to Ryan's, is why have to do it all at once? Why can't we do half at a time or something like that? So I hear what the board is saying, but I also hear what my director of technology is saying, with only 8 staff members to support all of the technology in the district. So there's a push-pull on, can we support what the board wants and financially, or not? I mean, there's a push-pull.
I guess I would have been sold on buying a 7,000 that you never showed me the 30. So, you just took me to the Honda lot a lot.
But I didn't want to hide anything. I wanted to be transparent, so.
No, I appreciate that, but I think that's what's making me question it then.
Sure.
Well, it's like, why can't we get the 5,000? Like, you know,
Yeah,
I mean, I
that's
do
what
think
I
that's
wanted.
probably where we're at,
Yeah.
but.
What happens with leasing if a computer, bad part, whatever, like, is there anything that goes along with that? Or
There's a warranty with it minus, you know, you back your car over it or something of that sort, then we end up paying out on it.
Sure, okay.
So, the other, when I'm thinking of between the two models, and comparing, so first of all, okay, and this is just the way I do it. I have 3 kids. Two have gone through college, one is in college. I did not buy them a $900 laptop. I bought them like a $500 or $600 laptop. And we're talking, it was in a backpack, it was dropped on the, commons floor, it was thrown into the bunk, it was, brought home on trains and planes and everything. And, for the most part, I mean, with the exception of one that was kind of bad, and they weren't Dells, they were lesser brands, they lasted the 4 years of college. So I kind of look and I kind of say, a Dell is better than what I got my kids. And I don't think and the teachers are going to be not as hard on them as my kids were, I would hope.
Really hope.
And I don't know, I just think that the smaller, the less expensive one, I don't know. I think with a Dell, you're already head and shoulders above as far as durability and things like that than some of the other cheaper models.
Mr. Wolf, did you have staff members testing both of them?
Yes, yeah, we have staff members using the 2000 series, and they didn't. I didn't have them test both different models.
One or the other. Okay.
Yeah. And they were happy with both models. So, but you take a car with 250,000 miles and you give them something with 10 miles on it.
Yeah.
I'd be happy too.
Why Dell versus one of the hundreds of other brands?
We've been purchasing Dell for quite a few years. All my techs are Dell certified. We could get Lenovo or something else. You're going to be in the same ballpark of pricing. We have Dell servers and other things too. To change it up would change our shop a little bit. Then I'd have to have my techs and warranty certified in 2 different models. We have so much Dell out there right now. Is there a reason?
No, money.
Okay. Lenovo's going to be probably in the same price. If you dropped it to Acer or maybe an Asus or something, something that is a little lower quality by my opinion, you could save some money.
But then you're going to pay for it later.
Sounds like a poor decision to make to me.
Well, and one thing to take in consideration too is that 25% tariff. Those prices are with that 25% increase. I know the manufacturers are maybe eating a couple percent of that, but purchasing it now versus in 2019, you're talking over $200 difference per device.
So I was going to say that, we kind of were talking about, do we like the 3,000 or 7,000, but you also kind of needed to know December versus after December, so I don't know if people have comments on that.
Yeah, and if you decide December, the prices you see here, as Mr. Wolf mentioned, on the 7,000, it's about $200 per unit less. He doesn't have an exact quote yet, but he's working on that.
Can we
So it could
reasonably
be
assume that the 3,300 is about $200 less too, or?
It wouldn't be quite that much.
Yeah, I'm sorry, what was the quote on there? Does it say?
740.
926.
926. It'll be 730, 740, something like that. So almost $200 less.
Well, I'm missing. What are you guys doing now?
I'm talking because of the tariff.
Easy.
Yeah.
These are the
But same with the 7,000,
prices.
sir. You're going to be
If we
a
want to buy them
couple
now,
$100 less
they're going to be
too.
less than what you see.
So that it goes for both models. Just
Do we know the reasoning behind the lack of processors, the Intel issue?
yeah. So Intel's changing all their manufacturing and their retooling their facilities to change the processors on them because of supply and demand. The amount of processors that are going into Chromebooks versus laptops, they are have to produce so many more processors for Chromebooks because you look at like us, we're looking at 400 laptops versus several thousand Chromebooks. So they're changing their manufacturing plants. And I don't know if this is just going to be a one-year thing that Intel's saying that once they get all their manufacturer plants retooled to fulfill orders for processors and everything that this will be done. But the main reason our vendors were telling us is order early, because if you order late, there's going to be so many people wanting Chromebooks and other different devices that it may take a couple months to get in. And that this is a late spring, summer thing that Intel's doing. So.
Now, are these both of these laptops?
Those are, yes, those are the 3000 and 7000 series are laptops. We're not talking Chromebooks tonight. I was just talking manufacturing from Intel.
This
December
is only for the
10th will
teacher
be,
laptops.
we'll-
I'm sorry.
No.
This is only for teacher laptops tonight. The Chromebook and one-to-one we'll talk about in December. They're two separate needs and projects.
And those are for the students.
Correct.
Right.
In December.
So if we
But
were,
these two that you're representing are both laptops.
That is
Yes,
correct.
Yes, those are Windows 10 laptops.
I'll go out on a limb and express an opinion of,
Sure.
I really don't like this $500,000 purchase that we may or may not have money for, so I would be in favor of buying the cheap computers and put it on the schedule or rotation to update them in 2 to 3 years. Because, and on some sort of schedule, so we're not getting hit with 400 units at a time. I
and would
don't
you,
want to bank on a future that is uncertain.
and would you want to buy those in December or
Yeah, buy them now.
buy them now?
Yeah.
It'd be well-
All of them or half of them?
All of them.
Which one?
The cheap one.
Ryan's saying buy the cheap ones now.
Buy the cheap ones now and then put on a schedule to replace half of them in 3 years.
Because it's an $80,000 difference. I mean, if you were talking a couple of hundred less than what's listed here.
So we put it somewhere around total cost of, I know this isn't exact, about
311.
$300,000 to do it now.
Tim,
Roughly.
are all your current, I'm just throwing a number, 400 computers that you have out there, are they all crawling right now? Do they all need to be replaced?
No,
Bottom
it's
line.
about, we used 400 for the quote. It'll be 375, 380,
Well, yeah, I know,
somewhere
I'm
in
just
there.
throwing, like I said, I'm just throwing a number. All those 300, whatever number
Yes,
that is.
yes.
Or all those need to be replaced?
They are in very rough shape.
That wasn't my question.
Are you saying I can get 6 more months out of them? I'd have to sit down and
A
go
year,
through
I'm
it.
talking a year. And here's where I'm thinking, guys. Replace whatever we really, really need to, as 200, say 200. Hold off a year. We got to be able to stagger them somehow. Because the answer I gotten before was, we only they were 1 year old, we couldn't replace them. They were 2 years old, we couldn't replace them. And then next you know, here you go, we're at 5 or 6, whatever it was. And we never got that stagger going. Because I've been asking these questions from the get-go.
But that's our fault too. I mean, we tell them how to spend the money and we told them to save the money. So that's, you can't say that's all the
Okay,
administration.
all right, sure.
I will give you an honest answer. Those batteries won't last another year. We would have to at least replace the batteries in the ones that would be functional for another year.
How many of those would you think?
I have no idea. We'd have to go through and test each individual one, and that would take some time. Because, I mean, you're talking hundreds of devices. And the
True.
devices that I got to get out of teachers' hands that they're using all the time, they don't want to give them up.
Do teachers use them for personal reasons?
Who knows?
I couldn't tell you.
Do teachers have them with them year-round?
24/7. What's that?
Year-round?
Yeah,
So they have them during the summer
year-round.
as well?
Well, yeah, they're
Sure.
doing their lesson plan and
They have them year-round.
Well, and even some of the, like maybe photos of student projects and things like that, while those aren't personal, they're they might be curricular and part of their job, they also personally probably would like to, those kind of things are kind of in a gray area. So I bet even if they didn't do any strictly personal things, they have things on there that are.
Feature-wise, does one offer more features than the other?
On
The ones you're presenting to us.
No.
Speed.
They have the same USB ports to them?
They're both i5 processors with the 256 gig solid state hard drive, 8 gig of memory on them. The only feature would be the battery. But they both have USB ports on it, USB-C ports. They're both touch screens.
They're both touch screens?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
I didn't want to present what I got because I think I might have mixed it up, but I just typed in real quickly at Google a 3390 and a 7390, but I didn't know more specifics than what I got in here. And there are some things that I pointed out, but I don't know that I have the right information. That's what I did want to go with that.
And you're saying pricing that you Googled?
I wasn't going after pricing. I was comparing.
Comparison. Okay.
Let me ask you, just by putting in 3390 and 7390, would I have gotten what I was looking for?
Mm-hmm. If it's Dell Latitude 3390 and Dell Latitude.
A Dell Latitude but both Latitudes, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, then I do have the right information. So let me throw some things at you here. It says that the 3390 is a touch screen and the other one is not. They're an expensive one.
I'm sure you can probably specifically order it without a touchscreen, but the ones that we have quoted do have touchscreens.
So I'm sure they just put the basics in here. Okay. So I agree with you. The smaller one, or the less expensive one, has more ports available, USB ports, guys, stuff that you stick into it on the sides, than the other one, than the expensive one. The less expensive one has, and I don't know what this stuff is. I'm just seeing the differences. A microphone input. I don't know if we would use it or not. The more expensive one has a smart card. Do we use a smart card?
We do not use
a
smart card.
So it'd be no.
Two-factor authentication and other things.
The expensive one has a Ethernet possibility of hooking it up to the Ethernet. Do we do just Wi-Fi?
We do Wi-Fi. That might be something specific that was on that one. We did not
specify. Okay, so that would be nullified for you all.
Did you say the microphone was on both? Or on?
No, it had an additional for the younger one, or the less expensive one.
So Mr. Wolf, so the 3390 and the 7390, you can get different specs on each of those, and this is bid based on the specs that we put in?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Just want to verify.
Yeah. Like I said, I just did basics.
And the specs on the ones that we put in are the same?
Yes.
They're very similar. Like Pedro did say, there is a little bit of difference of USB-C versus USB-A ports on them. Just being a higher end, there's more USB-C ports on the 7390. But when I said they were the same, they have USB ports on both of them. They both have touch screens. I was just being generalized.
Sure.
Mr. Wolf, I know also that you connect regularly with the other Kane County IT folk. Are there any other local districts using either one of these? Somebody that's had them for
5,000 series, West Aurora.
They took them all.
Okay, thanks.
Well, it's a very popular one, the 5,000.
Can I finish my list? I only got a couple more things left here. The more expensive one does have the backlit keys. My children love it for gaming. The weight is only a little bit over half a pound difference. The less expensive one has a little more weight, like Mr. Wolf mentioned. The only advantage I did see, guys, is that the more expensive one has a 3-year limited warranty, and the less expensive one has a 1-year warranty. Limited, whatever that means. That's the only advantage, generally, that I saw.
And our quotes both were 3-year warranties.
Were they? Okay,
yes.
Okay, so that nullifies that.
Yeah.
So.
To add to the confusion, if we said go buy them now, are the 5000 series available, and do they have?
Possibly, I would have to check on that.
Would it be fair to guess they'd be about halfway in between the costs?
It's right in between, yep, you're
They
right.
come with those bigger batteries. Do you
Yes,
know?
they do. Yep, it's, I want to say, off
Ryan
the top of my
says
head,
buy
it's a
them
10
all
or
now.
12 year out.
Buy them all now.
I think it's a 12-hour.
Well, that's the thing that scares me most about the cheaper computers is the battery life. And if we're going to spend the money now, and we're going to.
I can come on December 10th and have the 3,000 and 5,000
Well,
quote
that's
for
just
you of
me.
purchasing today. If that,
Let me,
My use, when I have a laptop, I just plug it in, right? So like when I'm
Sure.
at work, I plug it in all the time, and then when I'm, moving around my classes or whatever, then it's not, but it's plugged in every other time of the day, right? So I couldn't even tell you how long the battery runs. I just know it runs long enough for it doesn't kill out in an hour and 15 minutes,
okay,
right?
fair enough.
I use the laptop all day. Mine's always hooked up unless I'm going to a conference room where I hook it and I hook it up to the screens that I'm, in my meetings and whatever. And I don't even worry about the tanks. I know I'm going to be there probably about an hour. Even if 2, I'm still good.
That's
And then I come back to my desk and I hook it back in. And it comes with a plug, right?
It comes with one power
And they can
adapter.
take home with them as well, right?
It doesn't come with 2 power adapters. We'd have
But they can take it with them. Do they have a bag, by the way?
They do not have a bag. It does not come with one. We could purchase a sleeve for $8-10 if we wanted.
Would that be
I don't know if they would use it or not.
Most of them put it in their backpacks or their briefcases or in some other protective.
Okay.
I have a question about both of them. So as we're moving toward,
One-to-one.
like where snow days, we would like to be able to have those be educational days and do some instruction on, stream some things and do more online, maybe some live teaching, and things like that. Are these laptops going to handle all those kind of things?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they'll handle all the video processing and things like that. They're not.
I was talking about microphones. That would be one time when a teacher would need a microphone hookup.
I'd have to look specifically on that, but
Or they could use USB microphones.
I was just going to say, through the
Or a
docking
headset or
station or anything else, you can plug it in through USB. So,
Okay.
I do like Mr. Carey's idea of purchasing now. That helps us out so much down the road when we talk about one-to-one for next summer. That gives me winter break to start setting them up and getting them distributed. Next summer is going to be absolutely crazy for my department, especially if we move forward with a one-to-one and other things. We're talking several thousand devices that we're going to be setting up. This takes a workload off my department that we can get done before then. So that's
So do you
greatly
want a
appreciated
do you
for
want
that.
to find the consensus, or do you want Ryan to just make a motion and see if it flies?
I think, Meg, did you have something?
Oh, it says recommendation NA on the bottom.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, well, but if we're going to buy them now,
yeah.
you need a motion, right? And you need.
We have till
Action.
December 10th where we can bring it back a recommendation based on any
Oh, okay.
consensus.
Yeah, we-
And/or if you want more information on specifics.
If
So tonight was for discussion, just to see where the board would like to
Even if you want
land.
to buy them before the break.
Yeah, because you can, December 10th?
Yeah, December 10th would be fine. We
Okay.
Yeah.
could
That's why we
place the
intentionally
order
did it in
December
2
11th.
meetings.
Exactly.
if
What's
I
the
jump,
concern with the 5289 being phased out? If we're buying them all right now,
There's no concern if we bought them now. I'm 100% confident in that laptop. You could talk Westboro School District. All their teachers have them. There's other districts in Kane County that have them too. It's a
You just don't know
durable,
if you
nice
can-
laptop. It's just Dell's getting rid of that series.
So you don't know if
It
you
would
can get
still be
400?
warranted for 3 years. I'm not worried about that.
So
I just didn't know that was a possibility of
okay, so the
purchasing them.
concern then would be if we only did half now and half in a year, we wouldn't want to
We wouldn't be able to
If we
do
bought
the
them all
5.
right
Yeah,
now,
they would be 2 different models.
5289 would be on the table,
In,
theory.
I'm sorry.
If we bought them all right now, the 5289 would be on the table.
Yes. If I can get the stock. I don't know when Dell is stopping manufacturing them. So
Well, that's something you're going to have
that's
to
what I'm
find out.
saying. How about December 10th? I bring back a quote for the
Yeah, okay.
3390 purchasing now and the 5289, and then you can make a
So
decision.
Julian,
then.
could both of those fit in the budget this year?
The 3390, yes. the 5289, if it comes back right in between, call it a $500,000. I'm going to go with maybe. I am not comfortable saying go get it. I'm good with the 372, but we're getting close.
So if we were $100,000 off, so what are you saying when you say that? Are you saying that we...
Here's what it means, basically. Your management letter says the ed fund goes over by 100.
Right.
There it is. This is it.
Because next year we could spend...
That's right.
That
That's
much less.
That's all it is. We have plenty of fund balance that if the budget goes over, you get a management letter. That's it.
It says that we
Went over. We didn't manage
That we
our
went.
budget.
That's correct. That we didn't manage the expenditure budget.
Shame on you.
I'm always in trouble for something.
So so if there's no other reason that we would go with the 5289, my number's right there, if that's just, oh, well, it's a compromise because it's in the middle.
No.
If it really doesn't have anything more than the 3390 that we need, we should buy the 3390s.
I think you said the middle one had a longer
It
battery
had a
life.
longer battery life. It's
Is it
in
really worth
between on
another-
weight and size and everything else.
Is it really
so
worth another
it's-
$500 a computer?
What I'd suggest is we tell Mr. Wolf to get us
Quotes for
quotes
both.
for both, and we revisit it next meeting.
And we're leaning towards
Buy now.
buying all now?
I'm not 100% sure that there's even stock out there. I couldn't.
Okay.
There may be, there may not be. But I'll have it December 10th.
And to clarify, we're looking for him to get quotes to purchase. We're not interested in leasing at this time. Okay. I'm seeing no.
Me.
No.
Never.
So I've got at least 4 that are not.
So then it's fine. I'm not, I don't really care.
Okay. I just need
like
to
the
know.
cheaper number, so it's okay.
Yeah. I just need to know what what to ask for.
What to bring back.
Yeah.
Personally, myself, I would like to have them bring a plan, would like to request to have a plan that we put a cycle in, and then 4 years we're doing the same thing again. That whether it be 2 years, in 2 years, give us a plan. That in 2 years, we're going to replace half of them, or a third, or whatever.
You know what the plan is.
So I don't want to see this in 4 years again, because it's too expensive. And I'd rather break it up, break the expenses up throughout.
Yep, that's.
The question is going to be, Fedor, are you going to be the determining factor of whose computer gets?
I think it's a whether I'm here or not. I think budget-wise, you won't have to shell out so much money at one time.
Well, I understand that.
That's where I'm
but
going with that.
Who makes the determination as to who's?
So also with that, it would almost have to be a 2-year if you go with the 3390, because that means your 3390 is going to, half of the fleet, we're going to call it a fleet, will need to last 4 years. And in 2 years, we'll get rid of half, and then the other half stays for 4. So you've bought a lower quality laptop. Otherwise, if you stretch it to 3 years, now you're talking some 3390s lasting 6 years, potentially. Or you could do it 3 years and then 4 years. You could do it.
Or a third.
The 30.
You could do thirds.
The cheap ones have a 1-year warranty.
No, they have a 3 year.
3 years.
All right, so plan on replacing half of them at the end of year 3 and half of them at the end of year 4. It doesn't have to be.
Over the whole
Break
period.
it up.
Right, doesn't
yeah,
have to be 3.
doesn't
Okay.
have to be.
Okay, so year 3 and year 4. Okay. So 3390s, half of them would need to last 4 years.
Okay.
Is that?
Make that
I'm just making sure that we're all on the same
We need to get it
page.
done, and so
I know.
I'm willing to work with whatever's,
You're going to have 400 of them still at the end of year 3. You're not selling
Sure.
them back or anything, so you've
So,
got 400 to make
that's a
200
good point.
out of.
Sure, we can take pieces and parts and make whatever work for another year. Yep.
Has Dell had a consistent lifespan for each model? So in 4 years, will there be something similar to a 7390 or a 3390?
Sure. Yeah, they're always
Okay.
Yeah.
coming out with new models and of the same series.
Okay.
Until some new revolutionary technology comes out, whether it's augmented reality or whatever, who knows.
Easy there.
What happens to the laptops they have now?
We haven't fully decided that. I don't know if you want to.
I believe they're going to be recycled.
Okay, so we did get a couple quotes.
Will there be an option for them to keep them? Or is
We
that against
believe,
state law?
no, we believe that we might nothing's decided. We've discussed making them available to retirees only. The problem with letting them keep them is even the little things that go wrong, the first thing they're going to do is stop by Tim's office. And then he's not only supporting 400 new ones, but 350 old ones.
So you make them sign this thing?
We do.
Sorry.
And then they still stop by. And then Tim has to say, sorry, I can't help you. So, and that doesn't work really well
Blinking sign on the door.
in education.
Only your current work laptop.
He's very, very nice, and so is all of his staff, and they're very accommodating. So I believe we're going to recycle, except for perhaps the retirees.
And so I know when I've worked in libraries that are state funded, and I work at a federally funded place now. Excess property you can't give to people. It's illegal. Like you can't.
Correct.
I can't even say, oh, you know what? We're going to throw out that library book. You can keep it. I have to actually take it, and I actually have to throw it away. Rather than, and so can you let them?
Yep.
keep-
Here's what Maureen said, because I've asked that question. Give me 1 second, and I'll tell you exactly what she said about it. Because we do have a board policy that addresses the excess property. One moment, and here it is. If the computers will have a diminutive value, the last line of our policy authorizes the superintendent to dispose of them. If the computers will have some value and teachers would actually buy them at a low cost, there's school code that authorizes a school district to sell at public or private sale any personal property no longer needed for school purposes. If they don't have enough value that teachers would buy them, they can be disposed of by allowing teachers to keep them. As a public entity with financial concerns, I recommend that the district ask teachers to pay at least a token amount in exchange for keeping the computers. So yes, we can do that. The question then becomes signing something that says they will not bring it back to technology with one question. And I say one question because 400 people times one question becomes 400 questions. Exactly.
You have business cards. Here you go.
We'll buy them all those T-shirts that say, yes, I work in IT. No, I will not fix your computer. Your personal computer.
That's not quite the kind of customer service we'd like to provide, but
Tim, Mr. Wolf, do you have the direction you need for the next meeting?
I do.
There you go.
Okay.
Thank you very
All right.
much. I think
Well,
we're good. Thank you.
Thank you for your
Tim.
time. I appreciate it.
We appreciate it.
Question. In the IT budget, we have, what is it, 400, 700? What's in there? 1,000?
About 500,000 now. 530 is your budget?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
Does that allocate for any of this stuff? Replacing computers?
Not
or anything?
teacher laptops. This year, it has in there the batteries, some batteries, and
It does
some
do-
laptops.
Yeah, we did do,
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact amount we budgeted for, but we did
Yeah.
I want to say 30 or 40 replacements if we were unable to fix them, so we want to make sure we had some funding for that. A lot of that goes towards licensing, some of our fiber optic leases, internet services, our firewall licensing.
The support stuff.
Microsoft, yeah. Also, there's student devices in there.
About 250 of it is the student devices, because that's what the tech fee brings in, give or take.
And there's a lot of licensing in there. I mean,
Yeah.
there's a license on everything. Our phone system has licenses, you know.
So the computers we purchased, it has everything you need, software-wise?
Yes, yeah,
whatever.
we have all of our licenses with Adobe, Microsoft,
Right.
Google, everything.
The potential
So this is just hardware.
The potential computers that we may sell, we're stripping them all that stuff, right?
Yeah, we format the hard drives. So,
Okay.
and on top of it, when we recycle them with a company, they give us a written documentation that they also wipe anything else on them. Now, the value of it depends. They grade them A through F. Nothing will be A. That would be mint condition still in the box. Ours will probably be D's and C's.
Okay. All right. Thank
So,
you.
but there will be a little value, maybe $50 a piece on the existing, so.
But back to my original question, was basically all supportive stuff that supports your budget-wise.
Yes,
supports
yeah,
the
yeah, it's
licensing
mainly
and stuff.
support
Okay,
stuff,
all right,
yeah.
thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, so we'll move on to J4, approval of high school course book changes.
Yeah, traditionally, Mr. Rice is here for this presentation, or Mrs. Maris, but with where he lives and the traveling distance, I said that I would be able to share this because, again, if there are questions tonight, I can take any of those questions and provide them because it's a two-step process where it comes back to the board in December. And also, the courses themselves, there aren't any new courses to reference. So if you look at the packet for J4 on the first two slides, the first slide is there are no new courses to recommend for 1920. What the focus has been more, rather than taking the course book and make new courses, it's taking the current course book and looking at ways to extend or expand the honeycomb model and utilize personalized learning through our courses as opposed to new courses at this time. The second slide, you'll see that the ELA curriculum revision is underway. It's part of the every 7 years, each of the departments, their curriculum is reviewed, and that is underway now. And that, as they finalize that, that will come to the board in the spring or summer. So, and then on slide 3, you'll see the revisions to exist.
ELA includes foreign languages?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
An existing course languages, existing courses or language. The two courses in question, choir and photography 2. Choir, basically the naming change from freshman guys choir to freshman bass tenor choir. This is just to make it more cognizant of students' gender identification so that it's not just guys, it's makes it more flexible. Photography 2, a lot of it focuses on a dark room, and we don't have a dark room. And so just updating it to make it more various media and film development techniques. So those are the actual two changes that you would see. And again, the last 2/3 of this packet is the course book, so that's where you'll see those changes would show up. And then the next one, our work with Waubonsie Community College. As you know, when a student attends Waubonsie Community College, there's an entrance assessment for math and English language arts to be able to get credit. And one of the drawbacks for many students, or for some students, is the math piece. And so right now, the high school is working on a course that would satisfy the requirement for Waubonsie Community College at that point. So we're teaching a course that would then, or for next year, we would teach a course that meets that requirement. Because the students that don't meet that requirement now take courses there that are not credit bearing. So they're taking an entry level or lower level class and paying for it and not getting credit for that class. It's just allowing them to get up to the next level of math. So this course that we're working on with Waubonsie Community College and other area districts are working on that now to have that ready for next year.
So there's just one course you're talking about?
Yes, and for most of the students, it would be a senior level math course.
Okay.
And then based on how they do in that class, they would then be able to get the credit for, not credit to Waubonsie, but meet the criteria to start at a credit-bearing class.
Okay. So you're saying, good? Like if you get a B in that class, you don't have to take a test?
I'm not sure if it's that along with a test score. I just know that it would meet the requirement, so I don't know if it's B, C, I don't know the exact language of that.
Because currently they take a compass test, right?
Right.
And that wouldn't be just Kaneland, that'd be all school districts in Wabanzi's.
School districts, yes. All school districts were invited, I think it was last spring, to work on this. So I believe the majority of them, if not all, are working on this. But it is a district by district, those that want to have that relationship. And I would imagine those that attend Wabanzi are. I just can't speak to other districts.
I was just going for, it's not just us that has input on how Wabanzi, it's Wabanzi and us and.
Correct. Other people can have this opportunity. Then the next part, the graduation committee follow-up. As you know, last year we had a long conversation about Val and Sal, and then with the Latin designation, the Latin system. So wanted to let you know that that is still ongoing, primarily because some of the concerns were going to just the Latin system right away. There were some loopholes that the board and the high school wanted to work through, so they're looking through that still and working on it. So we don't have that final presentation ready to be able to say this is what we want to go with. So for at least one more year, we're going to continue to balance both of those, the Latin system and the Val-Sal. And Mike did want me to share that there were about 20 additional students last year that were recognized because of the Latin designation. So being able to go from just Val and Sal to others, 20 additional seniors were recognized at graduation.
I'm trying to remember that long conversation, but at the end of it, we voted to change the system. Is there a time frame attached to that was supposed to be done by? Because this seems like it's extending it another year.
It was this year because we decided on that last year for last spring, but we didn't want to go solely to the Latin system until we had some of those loopholes closed. So that's what they're working on now. And I can get back to you with exactly
So
when.
we voted to have them come back to us with their recommendation by a certain time. But we didn't vote to have valedictorian, salutatorian eliminated by a certain time.
We voted to do both for now.
We voted not to eliminate
I'm hearing
that.
what Ryan was saying is he thought that we said.
I don't remember.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't remember if we told them to do it by this date and then this isn't being met, or just how that,
No.
I don't remember.
No, I can go back and recheck, but I don't think it was 1 year or 2019 or 2020. It was go make sure you close the loopholes once you get it done, or do the best we can to solve those and then bring those back. So I can check, and if there's a deadline, we'll make sure it's met, but if not, we'll still try to work
Thank
through
you.
it.
Also, is it the next paragraph that says conversations have grown to include discussions of grading in general because proficiency-based grading. Sorry. So what would that look like?
Stop talking just enough to get the question out. That piece is going to be more conversation. We didn't go into great detail on that one because that's going to be water.
Thank you.
That's one I'll have to have Mike fill
It just
in
seems
more
like
on
it
that
could
one.
be a much bigger. That's why I did bring
Yep.
water.
Yeah, so that one is going to extend past whatever the conversation on Val-Sal and the Latin system would be. Let's pass that. You okay?
We'll talk later.
All right, so let's focus on the water over here. What was the answer there? I'm sorry. In reference to her question?
Yeah, the proficiency-based grading is part of personalized learning. That is something that the high school is working through and working towards that. So we don't have an answer, and I don't have an answer for you for tonight, and Mike doesn't have an answer yet. They're still working on that. And that's going to be a longer conversation, too. The Latin system and Val-Sal, that's probably something that could wrap up quicker, but as far as proficiency-based, we have a couple departments that are piloting it right now, and then Mike shared with us a curriculum review, so that's going on right now.
That's where there's no grade, and they just retake the test over and over like Yorkville, right?
Well, right now, those in the high school English department is utilizing it right now, and it's based on proficiency standards as opposed to a grade. But I think for now, until we shift to it, there'll still be a grade assigned for purposes of GPA and purposes of college for now till we go fully to that.
So I know the feedback from the Yorkville side is the kids don't care. You get to take the retake the test over and over and over. So which is like, well, okay, whatever. I really don't want us to go there.
I'm not sure that works that way in ELA. It might in other subjects, because I don't know that you hit on every standard continually.
True.
So if you didn't adequately meet a standard, I don't know that you'll get to have a choice to redo it 5 more times before you get your final grade. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not like a test with
You still have
all
to progress
standards
at a normal rate.
all standards included. I think like some papers might hit on certain standards and then another assignment might not.
We'll
So I
get
don't
to
know.
this. We'll get to discuss it later.
Yeah.
And it could look different by departments also.
Yeah, I'm sure it will.
So this the different levels, the kumas and kamas, whatever it's called, they're called. They mentioned the GPAs and stuff. I've asked this question before. Tyler used to have GPAs. We did away with them. I've been asking when are we putting them back, because eventually we're looking at these individuals are going to fall into these categories, right? How? I understand the current system is you want your GPA, come to student services and won't let you know. As opposed to before in Tyler, I can easily go and I can see what my son's GPA and class rankings were. Because that's basically what it boils down to.
Okay. I'll have to get that back to you, because I thought when we had this conversation, I thought that they were accessible, so I'm going to have to go find that out.
Now, if you go to services.
Well, no, I mean, what I'll find out is if parents can look at it and see.
You know, because it also goes with class ranking. That's why we didn't want to let go of the valedictorian. So you got to work for that.
But I do believe that they took the class rank, correct me if I'm wrong, or at a later meeting or whatever, I believe they took the class rank off the final transcript. The official transcript, I think, does not have the class ranking anymore.
I believe that's an opt-in.
Oh, it is? Okay.
Yeah, so it is off, and then students that want it on there have to go down and request it.
Okay.
Do they know that?
It's sent out. Now, I can't tell you if everybody read all the information that came out, but that was, I think, a law either last year or 2 years ago that changed.
Right.
I would think, though, that, I don't know, I kind of think, why put any kind of a deadline on the first part until you get through the proficiency-based stuff? Because if you're going to have courses, if you're not going to have grades to have a GPA on, to calculate a GPA with.
Right.
Sort of makes everything else a little
It just kind of seems like, maintain the status quo, but don't. Again. Don't make big changes until you know where you're going with that.
Right. Okay.
And my point was I couldn't remember if we included.
Yes.
If we did, then we need to revisit whether we changed
Sure.
it or hold you to it.
Yep. We'll make sure that's in part of the memo.
So do you foresee, or are you having challenges kind of getting the sort of the course book changed to kind of meet personalized learning? I keep thinking that we're going to start seeing more pathways created, and I don't know if those will just be in the classroom or if you'll see it come through the course book. Where they're, does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. I think down the road, there are courses that do fit would be considered, but I think for now, more of the idea was to use the current courses and the current structure and create those pathways within.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions? We're not going to let Teresa talk.
I'm not going to ask
anyone besides Teresa can speak.
Teresa.
And if you do have questions, again, this comes back in on December 10th. So if you have any questions, or if you review this and have questions as you look back through the actual course book itself, let us know. Or please let me know, and I can forward them to Mike.
Okay.
Thank you.
Go on to J5 III Conference Recap.
Yep, I will let our board president and potentially Teresa
Exactly.
share as you know, Mr. Atkins attended with us also, and Dr. Fuchs. And so what we did a couple years ago was add this to the agenda just to share a couple of the maybe highlighted conferences that we attended, and maybe a few of the potential takeaways.
All right. One of the main ones I went to was kind of on being a board president, so that was very helpful to me. And a lot that we talked about at first was developing trust and communication on the board, and I think that's something that we actually do fairly well. They talked about the key sort of foundation for that is to come up with board agreements, like sort of norms that we do, that we have, that we kind of revisit every year or 2 years. So that was good, but, they gave us, different comments on how to improve communication and trust within different board members. We talked then more structure of the meetings and like using the consent agenda well, which I think we do. I guess a lot of boards, some boards there didn't use consent well. So that was good. It seemed like our agenda was pretty much following best practices or common whatever other people do. By law, you only need one public comment. We do 2. That was one thing that kind of varied, but everything else I felt like we were pretty much on track with. They talked about getting feedback from board members if there's anything that happens during the meetings. I know we kind of formally talk about it maybe once a year, but informally, if there's any feedback, to definitely be open for that. And then we had an Open Meetings Act refresher, which was helpful. So that was one of my big ones I went to. I also went one on collective bargaining, a legal update, which was mostly about Janus, TRS, and a few other things, and evidence-based funding, which Dr. Fuchs was there as well, and I know she's going to update the board on that probably in the next month. So, but it was good. A lot of good topics. So that was me. And Teresa, I don't know if you can talk yet.
So the pre-conference workshop that I attended was called the Deep Equity Lens. It was all about equity, striving for equity in schools, and it's not just racial and cultural equity, but also gender equity and economic equity, trying to basically eliminate any barriers, that cause the achievement gap. So one of the interesting things that that came out of it was when they do the rankings of the top 100 high schools in the U.S. If they took the list and they altered it to say, okay, let's only keep schools that have at least 25% racial diversity. Once they did that, there were only 32 schools left. Mm-hmm. Then they said, okay, let's make it only public schools, where everybody can go, not, the expensive private schools. And they got down to 4. And then when they said at least 1,000 students, because, to have a broad enough group to compare, there were none of the top 100 schools were left on the top 100, were left on the list. So basically, when you alter for equity and things like that, basically the measurement tool is somewhat off. So I thought one of the takeaways, though, that I thought was really cool was they defined excellence. They say we keep the bar high in all we do. We educate students for life and for reflective citizenship. We empower students and employees in the preservation of their identity and their culture. Substance, depth, and critical thinking are more important than either compliance or test scores. And it really spoke to me. And they talked. The guy was very wordy, and we could have gone all day. It was a half-day conference, and so he didn't really get into how to get there. So he needed to give it up. Anyway, so that was the main one I went to. I went to another one that was about policy and procedure in an age of student activism. And for one thing, it confirmed that when we had the activism, that we follow best practices. What we did, by, you have to basically discipline all students the same, regardless of the topic and things like that. Otherwise, it was kind of just a lawyer up there standing and reading word for word and it was very boring. So, so I was thinking it was going to be this dynamic thing about free speech, and it was just somebody reading from a script. So anyway, those were the two highlighted. Bad and good.
I also attended one on collective bargaining, and it was interesting because one of the things that they had shared, the traditional IBB, and then the traditional negotiating styles. Then they also talked about a modified. They talked through a series of modified, what modified would look like, and it's a lot of what we did with Speak and a lot of what we're doing with KEA. So you're seeing more and more contracts being bargained that way, trying to take the best of both worlds and calling it a modified negotiation style. And then the other thing, there was also some time to talk at our tables, and then also they just went through what some of the hotter topics have been. They host this annually, and some of those topics change from year to year. So as they talk through those topics, and a lot of them were ones that most contracts are going through. Another one that I went to that was pretty good was on community connections, and it was one of the shorter ones. It wasn't the half day or the all day one, so it was about an hour, and a couple different school districts and one of the IASB field service representatives kind of shared what our best practices now, what our best practices through social media, through board communication, public comment, encouraging public comment, having your board meetings in a place that is welcoming and is accessible for everybody. And so I think as we went through that, fortunately we were able to check most of those boxes, and if there's any other ideas, as I review the notes, I'll make sure that we try to implement those. And then the last one that was also pretty good was Lockport District 91 had just gone through a strategic planning process, and so knowing that Kaneland 2020 is a year and a half away from concluding, and that probably at some point next year we'll start that process, I just kind of wanted to see a different district's method, different districts' style, how they did it, who they included, how and what forms they did for surveys, how often did they meet, who was on the committee, those kind of things. So there's some valuable information I was able to pull away from that I'll store and bring out next fall and be able to utilize. So those are the three that stood out most to me.
Great. I spent Friday facilitating the all-day risk management program for IASBO, and I always like to do that one every now and then. We bring in 6 speakers. One of the speakers gives the overview of the types of insurance coverage that school districts should carry or need to have. There's one speaker on fraud, so similar to the auditing kinds of things for internal controls. We had one speaker on fixed assets and the guidelines for that. One speaker on workers' comp and the risks associated with that. One on security and keeping your facilities secure. And then lastly, a speaker on construction projects and the things that you have to do to protect the district from problems with those. So that is a full day of really good information on risk management. And then on Saturday, as Shauna mentioned, I went to the EBF one, the evidence-based funding, which there were a couple new slides in there that I will share with you on December 10th. I'm going to combine that with the financial projections presentation and incorporate some of our EBF information just to keep all of you updated on that. This is the second year of the implementation, so it's a good reminder and review because it's relatively new in terms of education. I also went to one on collective bargaining and then a legal update as well. So all of them were very valuable. So thank you.
No recommendation needed on that one. I just wanted to, I know it's giving up of a couple days and part of a weekend, so as far as the superintendent, I want to thank you for attending. And Mr. Atkins also, maybe in the weekly update, I'll include some of his takeaways from some of the workshops he attended. So thank you for attending.
Great. And then the superintendent report.
First thing tomorrow night, we all did a collective I think most of us did a collective bargaining. It's apropos since we have our KEA negotiations going on. We do negotiate tomorrow night. It is our second session. Negotiations are from 6 to 9. Our board team meets at 5:30 across the hallway. And again, that's Mr. Rivas, Mr. Lawler, and President Sparber. So that's tomorrow night. And then Thursday night, we have our monthly CAC meeting, and I believe, Mr. Carey, you're on for Thursday night?
High school?
At the high school in the library, yep, from 7 o'clock to 8:30. And then Hall of Fame is not this Wednesday, but the following Wednesday. It's when we consider the first round of potential Hall of Fame inductees for the spring of 2019, and Gail scheduled for that one.
Yep.
And then again, just with a snow day and the possible schedule, I know people will start asking right away. It's too early to reconfirm and shift the schedule. We still have too many months ahead of us. But traditionally, if you lose a day this year with the current law, if you end up having a snow day, you add a day at the end. So those are the conversations that we'll have, but we don't finalize that yet till we get into about March or so, just because the weather is kind of out of our control.
Yep.
So those are all I have. Thank you.
Just wanted to remind you that we have an FAC meeting on December 6th. I don't have the list with me.
I just was looking, I just sent it, I'll tell you.
Thank you.
I just sent it.
I know, that's why I have it.
Thanks, Ryan.
Yeah, I'll give you a second.
And if you'll remember for FAC, we did cancel January because we want everybody to go to the spelling bee that night. So, yep. We moved the topics either back to December or forward to February. We're not missing out on anything. We just shifted.
December 6th.
Who's faster?
That would Miss Teresa. Miss Teresa.
Yeah, Teresa, and number 2 is me.
Okay. December 6th is a Thursday night, Teresa.
Yeah, as long as there's not weather that strands me in San Francisco. So I get back Wednesday night. So.
That is a Wednesday.
No, Thursday.
No. Yeah, so the night before I should get back, so I should be fine. Unless there's the weather
Is that
event.
weather thing? Sure.
Awesome. Anything else for the board?
Song title stuck in my head with San Francisco.
No? Topics for future agendas? And public comment? Nope. All right, so we do have executive session tonight where there will be no action taken following the session. Therefore, after the vote to go into closed session, the recording of tonight's meeting will be concluded. So tonight we plan on going into executive session for collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives, or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, as well as security procedures, school building safety and security, and the use of personnel and equipment to respond to an actual, a threatened, or reasonably potential danger to the safety of employees, students, staff, the public, or public property, as well as student disciplinary cases. So I'd like to entertain a motion to go into executive session for those 3 reasons.
So moved.
Is there a second? And a roll call.
Mrs. Pavlak.
Aye.
Mr. Rivas.
Aye.
Mrs. Sparber.
Aye.
Mrs. Witt.
Aye.
Mrs. Junk.
Aye.
Mr. Carey.
Aye.
And Mr. Lawler.
Motion carries 7-0.
It's a Tony Bennett.